Chapter 51, Luck. Tora Corporation HQ. Inside the office of the president, Taro Ctto was buried in paperwork related to the video game console, engrossed in discussions with the company's programmers. "We're still lagging behind Kishin in terms of video game and console sales. We need you to develop more captivating games urgently." Taro's voice resonated through the office as he passionately addressed the programmers. Taro Ctto had been appointed as the president of the company by Chairman Asahi himself, so he took matters related to video games and the Tora 16-bit console very seriously, just as Chairman Asahi did. "Mr. President, it may seem like creating games is a simple task, but we're still in the process of figuring it out. Coming up with something extraordinary on short notice is quite challenging," one of the programmers explained. "Yes, we've been working overtime trying to meet the demands," added another. President Taro furrowed his brow, his determination unwavering, and he exclaimed, "I understand the challenges, but I don't want to hear excuses. I need results." With those words, President Taro dismissed the programmers, leaving them with a sense of urgency. Suzuki Group. Suzuki Chairman's Office. "Father, Kishin remains unyielding and refuses to cooperate," Shiko reported to his father, Shiro Suzuki, the chairman of the Suzuki Group. "Their sales still dominate the video game market," Shiro remarked with a subtle smile, and he continued, "Commence the mass production of the video game consoles we've readied. We'll unequivocally demonstrate to both Kishin and Tora that Suzuki reigns as the premier electronic technology company in Japan." "Understood," Shiko and Seiki nodded in agreement. 2 weeks had passed since the launch of the Tora 16-bit console, yet their daily sales remained stagnant at 8,000 to 12,000 units throughout Japan. Even their video game cartridges experienced slow sales, with the exception of the game Happy. In stark contrast to Kishin Famicom, which boasted sales exceeding 20,000 units in Tokyo and various cities and prefectures, along with a substantial demand for their video game cartridges, the initially apprehensive Kishin employees found a newfound sense of calm. When Kishin was the sole player in the market, they had become complacent and careless, which had annoyed Shin. However, the emergence of a competitor rekindled their cautious and vigilant spirit, fueling their competitiveness. Kishin Company's net worth skyrocketed to an astonishing 13.9 billion yen, a surge that left everyone astonished. In just a mere 6 months, the company had experienced unprecedented growth. It was no wonder that the Suzuki Group was eager to get their hands on it. Inside the CEO's office, Shin held a report detailing the results of the reverse engineering process of the Tora 16-bit console. Shin smiled as they had finally managed to decipher the CPU technology, thanks to the influx of professionals within the company. The newly established department, Kishin Research, was now populated with individuals holding master's degrees in computer science and various other experts. Among them, Yuji Tamanaka stood out as an invaluable addition. He held a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Harvard, making him a prized recruit handpicked by Shin himself. Securing such a talent was a stroke of luck. It started when Kishin had managed to hire an 60-year-old man who was willing to take on any role, even that of a janitor. One day, while Shin was enjoying coffee in the company's building cafe, he noticed the old man meticulously cleaning the cafe. Intrigued, Shin invited him for coffee, only to discover the old man's talent for creating toys. In particular, he had crafted a Lego set, which had not yet been invented in this world. Given that Shin had already established a subsidiary called Kishin Merchandise, specializing in toys, figurines of characters like Super Mario and Donkey Kong, pillows featuring fluffy Super Mario designs, and clothing with Kishin game-themed designs, he was impressed by the old man's skills. This talented individual was none other than Ataraha Tamanaka. Impressed by his abilities, Shin invited him to be the CEO of Kishin Merchandise. At first, Ataraha chuckled at the notion due to Shin's young age, thinking him an ordinary young man. However, when he was invited to Shin's office, he was shocked to discover the truth that Shin was the owner of the company. But the story didn't end there. Ataraha's son, Yuji Tamanaka, had been a government-sponsored scholar at Harvard due to his exceptional intelligence. Upon returning to Japan, Yuji was surprised to find his father as a CEO. His father convinced him to join Kishin, and Ataraha introduced Yuji to Shin. The revelation that Yuji had studied at Harvard took Shin by surprise. Grateful for the opportunity, Shin hired Yuji for the Kishin research department, offering an attractive salary. With Yuji on board, the research on various components in the Tora 16-bit system became significantly easier. Kishin also set up factories and acquired the necessary equipment to mass-produce the required components, eliminating their dependency on Tora electronics. Factory setup, manufacturing equipment, assembly line, production line, tooling, automation, supply chain management, quality control, mass production, lead time, capacity planning, quality assurance, cost optimization, environmental compliance, lean manufacturing, prototyping, factory commissioning. Everything required for operations had been prepared according to the documentation. Shin simply needed to trust the professionals. With their newfound independence in component production, Kishin Electronics could now truly be called an electronics company. Reflecting on this achievement, Shin placed the papers on the table and smiled as he said, "Thank you for your outstanding work, Mr. Tamanaka," addressing the bespectacled man in front of him. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Suzuki," replied Yuji, adjusting his glasses. Chapter 52, The Legend of Zelda Anime. In an ordinary household in Tokyo, a young man voiced his intention. "I'm going to play a video game," he exclaimed, though his younger sister paid him no mind. "Humph! You can play those games anytime. I want to watch the new anime on the Asahi channel." "Cuckoo," Kiro's younger sister, retorted with a pout as she changed the channel. Kiro, displaying a hint of disdain, responded, "You're already 11 years old, and you're still watching kids' shows." Cuckoo, however, was unfazed. "What's it to you?" she retorted, settling onto the sofa. She had never been a fan of video games, even as the trend continued to rise in Tokyo, gradually spreading throughout Japan. The reason for her disinterest in video games was simple: she found them silly. In her eyes, anime and movies remained her preferred source of entertainment, while video games were merely a means to pass the time. Cuckoo's daily schedule was packed with school, piano lessons, and studying, leaving little room for video games. In the rare moments of free time, she either tried her hand at baking cookies or indulged in watching children's shows and movies. "Damn it," she heard her brother mutter, his annoyance clear. But she paid him no mind. To her, her elder brother, at 14 years old, seemed to waste more time than she did, and she took pleasure in teasing him, finding it a way to level the playing field. As the program on Asahi Channel switched to the anticipated animated show she had been waiting for, Cuckoo's excitement grew. Asahi TV Channel. The opening featured a Japanese melody, followed by the appearance of an animation that was notably high in quality. It portrayed a young man with elf-like ears, blue eyes, and a blend of brown and blonde hair. He was adorned in a green tunic and hat, creating a captivating medieval fantasy atmosphere as he raced across a lush, grassy landscape. The vibrant blue sky and clouds in the animation were breathtaking. The animation flowed seamlessly, depicting a young woman, seemingly a princess, being whisked away by a menacing monster. The young man in the green tunic reached out towards her. Cuckoo was genuinely impressed by the animation, which had only just begun but had already left a strong impression. She turned to her brother, eager to share her excitement. "See this? It's the most highly anticipated anime on Asahi Channel this month. Isn't it amazing?" Kuro, though initially irritated, couldn't help but acknowledge the animation's exceptional quality compared to others. However, he refrained from voicing his agreement, as admitting such would feel like conceding defeat to his sister. As the credits rolled on the screen, listing the talented individuals behind the animation studio was revealed as Midrange Studio. Following this, the title The Legend of Zelda appeared on the screen, much to Kuro's surprise. What startled him even more was the appearance of the Kishin Entertainment logo. "Wait! Isn't that?" Kuro exclaimed in astonishment. He pointed to his Famicom, where the Kishin logo was prominently displayed, then directed his sister's attention to the television screen. "Look! It's the same logo!" he pointed out eagerly, showcasing the identical Kishin logos on both the Famicom and the screen. Cuckoo, still unfazed, nodded in acknowledgement. "You're right," she conceded nonchalantly. "But I don't really care." She continued to watch the show, while Kuro gritted his teeth. No wonder the animation looks so good. It was made by Kishin. He teased his sister. "Humph! It's obvious Midrange made it." "They're just sponsors," Cuckoo retorted dismissively. Kuro couldn't argue with that, and the anime The Legend of Zelda began. It first introduced the young man named Link, an adventurer in the Kingdom of Hyrule. The show opened with Link battling mobs in the forest, wielding an ordinary sword. "Great! With this, the task is complete," Link remarked, collecting some of the monster remains he had defeated and placing them in his pouch. He then hurried back to the village to exchange them for money. However, one fateful day, the evil forces of Ganon attacked Link's village while he was away in the forest. His friends and the people he considered family were mercilessly slain. Upon his return, Link was met with the grim aftermath, a desolate village. The air was heavy with the stench of blood, and the horrors of the gruesome scene were evident everywhere, though the details were appropriately censored for the young audience. Overwhelmed by pain and terror, Link let out a heart-wrenching roar and clutched his chest. After composing himself, he began to investigate and soon discovered that it was the malevolent forces of Ganon that had laid waste to his village. Filled with an unyielding sense of justice and a determination to prevent any other village from suffering a similar fate, Link embarked on a journey to Hyrule Castle, where he sought to enlist as a warrior under the Hyrule family. After all, Hyrule was in search of a hero, and Link had chosen to be that hero. During his travels, Link encountered numerous people who had sought refuge from villages and places ravaged by Ganon's forces. Through these experiences, Link's sense of justice deepened, and his anger toward Ganon intensified. His life's purpose and goal became clearer as he witnessed the suffering of innocent people. As the anime came to a close with the words "to be continued," Cuckoo, who had been watching, felt a surge of emotions and even teared up slightly as she wondered aloud, "I wonder what will happen next." Kuro, who had also been engrossed in the show, unconsciously replied, "Yet." Cuckoo, taken aback, looked at her brother and teased, "What's this? I thought you didn't want to watch an anime." Kuro blushed but defended himself, "It's different." However, as they continued their conversation, the ending theme of The Legend of Zelda anime concluded, and an advertisement for Kishin appeared on the screen. The Legend of Zelda video game is available in various malls and stores. Buy now for your Famicom. The two siblings were left dumbfounded, staring at the TV screen, both thinking in unison, that anime actually has a video game. Chapter 53, Rating and Research. At Asahi HQ. CEO's office. "Sir, our ratings have increased." A young woman burst into the room, startling the middle-aged man, Yude Hayakawa, who was busy processing paperwork and devising strategies for the company. Due to her high heels and clumsy nature, the young woman, Rin, tripped and fell to the floor. "Rin!" Yude exclaimed, rushing over to her. "Are you all right? Why are you so flustered?" Rin winced in pain while holding her leg but quickly replied, "I'm not flustered, sir." Puzzled by her unusual behavior, Yude continued, "Then what's going on? Why the rush?" Smiling broadly, Rin replied, "CEO, our ratings in the Kanto region have gone up." Yude was taken aback by the news and asked eagerly, Really? What's the new rating? Rin nodded enthusiastically and said, it's gone up from 9% to 12%. Yude was shocked, and he exclaimed, 12%. Rin nodded again. It might not seem like a significant increase, but in the world of television ratings, it was quite substantial. Yude pinched his own cheek as if to check if he was dreaming, then he looked at Rin and said with joy, it's not a dream. Tell me, why did our Asahi channel's ratings increase? Rin beamed and explained, it's all thanks to the anime we aired last week, The Legend of Zelda. Yude nodded in recognition and said thoughtfully, ah, yes. That's the anime produced by Madrange Studio, and we rented the morning time slot to Kishin Entertainment. Rin confirmed, exactly, CEO. It's because of The Legend of Zelda anime that our channel's ratings have risen. Yude was taken aback by this revelation and said thoughtfully, I knew it was a wise decision to air that anime, but I didn't expect such a significant impact on our overall ratings after just one episode. Rin nodded in agreement. Yude continued, I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that the first episode of the anime had a 14% rating. Even though the time slot was rented, it's still a great success. But to hear that the second episode also performed exceptionally well. Rin interjected with excitement, the second episode of The Legend of Zelda anime achieved an impressive 19% rating. Yude was thoroughly shocked by this news. The rapid rise in ratings for just the second episode of an anime was beyond his expectations. It meant that nearly 2.8 million households were tuning in to watch the show. At Kishin HQ. In the meeting hall, Lee Han provided updates on the sales of Kishin Famicom and video games. After the first and second episodes of The Legend of Zelda anime, sales of Famicom and The Legend of Zelda video games increased by at least 4% compared to the previous day. The employees were elated, and their gazes turned towards Shin, their young leader. Initially skeptical about Shin's focus on anime marketing, they were now witnessing its effectiveness within just 2 episodes or 2 weeks. Once Lee Han finished, Shin couldn't help but smile. Not only that, Asahi TV just called us with today's episode ratings. The entire room was filled with anticipation as Shin delivered the news with a grin. The current rating for our anime has reached 19% in the Kanto region. The employees were left dumbfounded by this astounding achievement. It meant that millions of people were now tuning in to watch Kishin's anime, and it was an incredibly pleasant surprise for everyone involved. Shin continued, given the increase in Famicom sales, it won't be surprising if we reach 1 million in sales within a week. And not to mention, The Legend of Zelda will likely sell hundreds of thousands of copies in just a week or so. This estimation was truly surprising. Lee Han chimed in with a sigh, if we hadn't included the option to choose 2 freebie games, Super Mario Bros. Would probably be our highest-selling video game. Shin chuckled and reassured, don't worry about it. We'll release more games in the Super Mario series, after all. The employees in the room shared a chuckle. They didn't seem too concerned about this except for Lee Han, who had a keen eye for cost efficiency. Once the employees had left the meeting room, only Shin and Lee Han remained. Shin turned to Lee Han and inquired, how's the progress in the handheld research? Lee Han's expression grew serious as he replied, it's a rather complex technology. The research team estimates that it will take about half a year or possibly more to complete. Shin sighed upon hearing this response and said with resignation, there's no other way around it. Our research department still lacks the necessary resources. We need to allocate a significant portion of our funds to that department, recruit more professionals, and expand our labs to expedite the process. Shin wasn't too concerned about recruiting more professionals, as they had strict contracts in place to prevent any information leaks. With Kishin's increased net worth, Shin had established comfortable rooms near the company's premises for these recruited professionals. While the living conditions were good, they were isolated from the outside world, leaving their phones and personal belongings behind. This was a security measure to protect the confidentiality of the research. Although it might seem stringent, these professionals agreed to these terms as it was clearly stated in their contracts. Moreover, they were experts in technology and chemistry, so they anticipated such precautions. Due to their exposure to chemicals, Shin emphasized their safety and protection. Shin had no other option, he couldn't afford to fail. If the details of this research on upgrading their console and handheld project were exposed, he would effectively bid farewell to the business world. It would be a goodbye to Kishin and a warm welcome to Tora. This highlighted the gravity of the situation if he were to become complacent. Chapter 54, New Concept of Gameplay. In a random household in Tokyo, Ctto was brimming with excitement as he had just purchased a new video game called The Legend of Zelda. He rushed back home, caring little about anything else, and eagerly inserted the cartridge into his Famicom console. As the console powered up, the Kishin logo appeared on the startup screen, and Ctto couldn't help but notice that the pixel animation in this game was superior to the Tora 16-bit video games his friend had recently acquired. This improvement was thanks to the growing number of programmers in the Kishin department, guided by Shin, who had maximized the animation's potential on the Kishin Famicom 8-bit system. The title The Legend of Zelda splashed onto the screen, and Ctto wasted no time starting the game. He began by entering his character's name before diving into the adventure. A line of text scrolled across the screen, narrating the game's backstory. The Legend of Zelda. Long ago, Ganon, Prince of Darkness, stole the Triforce of Power. Princess Zelda of Hyrule broke the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 pieces and hid them from Ganon before she was kidnapped by Ganon's minions. Link, you must find the pieces and save Zelda. It was a straightforward introduction, with the message vanishing after a moment, followed by the appearance of an inventory screen showcasing various items. All of treasures. Heart, container. Heart, fairy, clock, rupee, 5 rupees, life potion, second potion, letter, food, sword. White sword, etc. With this information in mind, the game officially commenced. Ctto found himself controlling a character dressed in green attire, reminiscent of Peter Pan, placed in an open world. The pixel animation quality was notably superior to the Tora 16-bit games. Ctto couldn't help but mutter, "It's just like in the anime," as he maneuvered his character. Unlike Super Mario, where he could only move in one direction, he noticed that here he had the freedom to explore various paths. However, to his frustration, he discovered that he couldn't attack the monsters despite repeatedly pressing the controller buttons. After dying to an enemy, Ctto pondered why he couldn't attack. He reattempted to control his character, hoping to solve this puzzle. Entering a cave near his respawn point, the scene shifted to a dimly lit space with 2 torches. In front of him stood an old man in 2D pixel art. A line of text appeared, indicating the old man's words, "It's dangerous outside, take this." Ctto observed a sword, realizing the solution. "So that's why," he murmured as his character now brandished a sword. With newfound confidence, he ventured back outside, where his sword now functioned as intended. As he played, he discovered the freedom to explore different paths, unlike in Super Mario, where the path was linear. While he had to learn the game mechanics himself due to earlier neglecting the text, this didn't diminish his gaming experience. Ctto couldn't help but smile as he felt the connection between the game and the anime. In the anime, the main character fought against monsters, and in this game, it seemed that a princess had been kidnapped, mirroring the storyline he was familiar with. Ding dong! The doorbell chimed through Ctto's house, prompting him to pause the game. He hurried downstairs and swung the door open to find his friend, the owner of a Tora 16-bit console, standing outside. "Hey, Ctto! Let's play! I brought my Tora 16-bit with me!" his friend exclaimed, holding up the Tora video game console. Ctto welcomed him in and led him upstairs to his room. He couldn't help but tease, "What games can we even play on a Tora console?" His friend, Matsu, responded, Tora just released a new game. It's a two-player baseball game. He proudly displayed his Tora baseball video game cartridge. Ctto couldn't hold back a snort. Didn't they simply copy that from Kishin's two-player football game? Honestly, Tora lacks originality. Matsu had no rebuttal. He regretted allowing his parents to spend his allowance on the Tora console, and his disappointment grew as he noticed the paused game on Kirito's television. However, since Matsu's parents were devoted Tora fans and consumers, they had purchased the Tora 16-bit console for him. Curious, Matsu asked Ctto about the game he was playing. Without hesitation, Ctto resumed the game and introduced it to Matsu, who became utterly fascinated by the gameplay as he watched Ctto play. Matsu's curiosity got the better of him, and he asked, "Can I give it a try?" With a smile, Ctto handed over the controller to Matsu, who eagerly took it and began controlling Link in the game. Together, they ventured through the pixelated world, defeating monsters, and Matsu found himself captivated by the unique gameplay. During a pause, Matsu turned to Ctto and said, "Ctto, what if we swapped consoles and game cartridges?" Ctto chuckled at the suggestion and replied, "Dream on. I wouldn't trade for Tora trash." Matsu grinned and added, "Maybe I can sell this Tora at a lower price to save up for a Kishin SKT Famicom." Ctto laughed, "Who would buy it, hehe." In the office of the Tora Corporation president, Taro Ikeda wore a grim expression as he observed a Kishin SKT Famicom game, The Legend of Zelda, being played by one of the programmers. The programmer himself appeared equally solemn. Taro spoke with a tone of disappointment, "The company treats all of you well. Why can't we produce a game like this? Why must Kishin be the first to introduce such a groundbreaking gameplay concept?" He gazed sharply at the programmers. The office remained in silence. Goda Mitsui, the creative director, hesitantly suggested, "We could try to replicate this game." Before he could finish his sentence, Taro slammed his hand on the table and raised his voice, "How many times must we copy Kishin's games? Don't you all have your own originality? Your creativity? Why can't we create our own video games?" The programmers, especially the creative director, remained silent. Seeing their lack of response, Taro sighed with resignation. "Fine, if you're going to copy, at least make sure it's better than the original, understood?" The creative director nodded fervently. With the advent of 2D pixelated games, the programmers and the creative director were still adapting and learning. However, Kishin seemed unstoppable, continuously producing new and innovative games. Chapter 55, Suzuki Siblings Complacency. The Legend of Zelda anime became a trending sensation, especially after its second episode was released. The video game adaptation of The Legend of Zelda also gained popularity in various cities in the Kanto region. This buzz even attracted the attention of broadcasting network giants such as Nippon TV, NHK, and TBS. It was truly unexpected that a company unrelated to the entertainment industry, like Kishin, decided to venture onto the entertainment stage. The most prominent broadcasting network in Japan was Nippon TV, with its headquarters located in the Shiodome area, Minato Ward. The CEO of Nippon TV, Akimitsuo Ishizawa, held a report paper brought by his secretary. He expressed his thoughts, saying, "It's quite intriguing for a small company to step into such an unfamiliar market. This company certainly has ambitious goals." His male secretary stood respectfully beside him and added, "The Legend of Zelda anime has been praised for its compelling storyline and impressive animation quality. Many people are speaking highly of it, and Asahi News even went so far as to claim that it marks the beginning of a golden age for anime." Akimitsu chuckled while stroking his chin, "Lofty dreams. The anime industry has always been viewed as somewhat derivative of American animation. I doubt it will go that far." He spoke with a hint of disdain before continuing, "A golden age? Hehe, that's a laugh." His secretary nodded in agreement, saying, "I concur, sir. While the anime may enjoy some popularity now, it's likely to subside over time. Akimitsu nodded and casually tossed the paper report aside. Little did they know that Kishin's foray into entertainment was just the beginning. Suzuki Financial HQ. In the CEO's office, Shiko Suzuki was engrossed in watching a recorded tape of The Legend of Zelda anime through a VCR. "Wow, I really like this anime!" Shiko exclaimed, enjoying the show while his secretary provided discreet assistance under his office desk. "Oh, not there." Shiko reacted as he panted, "Yes, right there." Creak. The office door suddenly creaked open. Startled, Shiko hurriedly covered his mouth and looked at the person who had entered. It was his sister, Reina Suzuki. Shiko glanced at her in surprise and asked, "What are you doing here?" Reina Suzuki was dressed quite fashionably, wearing a hat, gloves, and fancy heels. She exuded an air of pretentiousness. With an elegant stride, she approached Shiko, not wasting any time, and asked straightforwardly, "My car was accidentally scratched. Since it happened on my way to the Suzuki department store, it should be covered by my insurance, right?" Shiko gestured to Ino, his secretary under the office desk, to cease their activities as he replied to his sister, "Really?" He sighed and shook his head. "Come on, my friends are waiting for me. We're planning a shopping spree at our company's department store," Reina pouted, not appreciating her brother's unresponsive behavior. Shiko shook his head, saying, "You didn't even get insurance through us." Reina retorted, "What do you mean? Father already took care of everything for me, didn't he?" Shiko snorted in response, "Just because Suzuki Financial is a subsidiary of Suzuki Group doesn't mean you own everything that Suzuki Group companies have. Besides, you can't simply barge into my office to report your problem. Additionally, we need details about how your car was damaged." Seeing Reina's silence but pouting, Shiko added, "Furthermore, we can't fix it immediately. According to our company's insurance policy, you need to cover the repair costs up front before the insurance coverage kicks in." Reina pouted as she hurriedly said, "Couldn't you spare me the details? Just replace my car with a brand new one." Shiko chuckled and replied, "That's not how insurance works, sister." Reina opened her LV bag, took out a wallet, and extracted several thousand yen in cash, saying, "Just lend me your car for a while, then." She tossed the money onto Shiko's office desk. Shiko was in the middle of buttoning his pants and belt when he stood up hurriedly, while his secretary discreetly remained below the office desk. "You can't. That's a Nissan President model. You can't use it, it's one of my collectibles." Shiko exclaimed urgently, pushing the money back toward Reina. Reina retorted, "Why are you using a car that's not from the Suzuki brand?" Seeing her brother's inability to respond, she chuckled and added, "Besides, I'm only borrowing it." Without waiting for Shiko's response, she exited his office. "Spoiled brat," Shiko muttered, and just then, his phone rang. Shiko saw that the caller was Seiki and answered, "Hello." Seiki greeted him before saying, "Big bro, Kishin's new game The Legend of Zelda is a huge hit. It might impact the sales of the Suzuki console that father plans to release." Shiko was quite surprised and exclaimed, "Oh yeah, I watched the anime version of it, and it was also produced by a Kishin subsidiary, right?" Seiki silently snorted at his brother's ignorance, feeling that if his older brother hadn't graduated from a prestigious university, father might have disowned him. Seiki replied, "Yes, but the estimated sales of the video game version are taking the market by storm." He then added, "It's a good thing I didn't accept Kishin in my retail company, or they could have sold even more." Shiko nodded and said, "That's the advantage we have that Kishin doesn't. We have retail companies, so we don't need to worry about the Suzuki console being placed on low-traffic shelves." He added, "Let's not concern ourselves with the number of Suzuki console sales. Instead, we need to plan with the Suzuki Group president, the person father assigned, about video games, and strategize how we can surpass them." Seiki agreed, "I agree. President Kurosawa has already managed the process of creating subsidiary companies related to video games. We just need to execute this properly, and the money will come," Shiko concluded with a smile. They may believe everything is that easy, but in reality, it's much easier said than done. Chapter 56, Handheld Progress Research and Tetris Rights. At the Kishin Research Building, Shin arrives at the entrance. He leaves his phone and belongings with the security guard, as is the standard procedure, and proceeds into the building. He is handed a mask and glasses as an extra precaution. Even though he won't be entering the lab directly, he'll only be observing from outside the lab through the glass. Inside, the researchers greet Shin warmly after donning their protective gear. "Good morning, Mr. Suzuki. You're here quite early," Yuji remarks as he sees Shin. Yuji isn't particularly surprised by Shin's presence, as Shin occasionally visits to provide suggestions, blueprints, and design input for their products. "May I take a look at the unfinished handheld?" Shin asks with a smile. "Of course, sir," Yuji replies, gesturing to his colleagues who are busy researching the handheld game console. Shin's fellow researchers, donned in their protective gear, enter the lab. They retrieve the handheld and then return to the transparent walls separating them from Shin. One of the researchers carefully places the handheld on a stand near the transparent wall, allowing Shin to observe the device's gameplay through the glass. Upon seeing the partially completed handheld, Shin smiles with satisfaction. While the handheld may not yet match his ideal, it's already a significant step in the right direction. Everything is in place, and Shin recognizes that this is just the beginning of the company's handheld gaming venture. Moreover, the unfinished handheld is nearing completion thanks to the funds Shin allocated to the research. Now, Shin simply needs to be patient as the handheld inches closer to becoming his vision of the ideal Game Boy. "What are your thoughts, Mr. Suzuki?" Yuji inquires with a smile. Returning the smile, Shin remarks, "It looks promising, but there are still some areas where it can improve. Remember, it's not the finished product yet." He gazes at the Tetris game being played on the incomplete handheld. Yuji nods in understanding and proceeds to ask respectfully, "If I may inquire, why did you choose Tetris as the freebie to accompany the Kishin Game Boy?" Being a valued member of Kishin, Yuji is privy to the company's future plans for the handheld gaming device. Shin's smile widens slightly as he answers, "I intend to acquire the rights to Tetris in the near future." Recognizing that Shin isn't willing to divulge more, Yuji wisely remains silent. Narita International Airport. Inside the bustling airport, Oryo Masayoshi, a middle-aged man dressed in a formal black suit, sits in a waiting area. He repeatedly checks his wristwatch to keep an eye on the time. He's bound for New York, USA, and he's booked a flight for the journey. While waiting, he retrieves a set of papers from his suitcase, carefully scrutinizing the contents to ensure there are no errors. At the top corner of the paper, the Kishin logo is prominently displayed. Oryo held the position of Business Development Manager, BDM, at Kishin Company, and he had been entrusted with the task of negotiating the acquisition of Tetris rights from Newland, a company based in New York. Kishin Company had already made preliminary contact, and the CEO of Newland expressed a desire for an in-person negotiation. Thus, Kishin had no choice but to send their representative, Oryo Masayoshi, to New York, USA. Checking the airport board, Oryo noticed that his flight time was approaching. He returned the papers to his suitcase and securely closed it. As his flight was about to depart, he rose from his seat and joined the other passengers who were boarding the same flight. Oryo hoped that the negotiations regarding the Tetris rights with Newland would proceed smoothly. After his visit to the company's research building, Shin got into his car and drove towards Tokyo's Chuo ward, specifically the Ginza district. What was his purpose? Well, he intended to purchase a luxurious ring from Ginza Mitsukoshi. It was meant for his future wife, Myra Sakura. With the approval of her parents already secured, there was no need for concern on that front. As for his own parents? Frankly, Shin didn't care much about their opinions. He had distanced himself from his family and wasn't ready to reveal the extent of his success to them just yet, especially considering the vast difference in financial standing between him and his family. If his family were to discover his modest success, especially the Suzuki family, a sizable and influential clan, he would likely be pestered by his 4 uncles and 7 aunts. 3 of his aunts were his father's sisters, and then there were the connections through his father and brothers. He needed to be prepared, especially for the envy and potential efforts to sabotage his company that might come from his brothers. Such a situation was far from desirable. Shin couldn't allow it to happen unless he had a firm grasp on the situation. His company was still a fledgling, a weakling compared to the Suzuki Group, which was akin to a behemoth. He was so cautious that he would often wear a cap or face mask when leaving the company building. Since his company was private, his identity as the Kishin CEO remained undisclosed to the outside world. Only key employees and trusted programmers, with the exception of Myra's family as well as a certain journalist from TBS, knew his identity. He had signed a contract with TBS to keep his identity secret, and both parties wanted to avoid the consequences of violating that agreement. Fortunately, the Suzuki Group, and his brothers' companies within it, seemed uninterested in uncovering the identity of Kishin's CEO. To them, Kishin was just a small company, despite its profits and earnings. However, this didn't mean that Shin had no intention of revealing himself to the world. He would do so when he felt confident and capable of handling the consequences. Shin drove for about 20 to 30 minutes before reaching his destination. After parking his car, he stepped out and walked along the sidewalks, before finally arriving at Mitsukoshi Station. There, many people bustled about, and Shin was now close to Ginza Mitsukoshi. Ginza Mitsukoshi was a traditional department store in Tokyo, and with Ginza district in general are home to numerous luxury brands such as Cartier, Bulgari, and Tiffany & Co. It was at one of these brands that Shin intended to purchase a ring for Myra. Chapter 57, Friend. Shin gazed up at the towering Ginza Mitsukoshi building and the billboard perched high upon it, making him feel insignificant amid the bustling crowd of people. As he ventured inside the department store, he couldn't help but be taken aback by the sheer opulence that met his expectations. Ascending an escalator, he began his search for the specific brands he intended to purchase from. Meandering through the store and seeing that he didn't see the Luxurious brand, he looked outside the department store. He eventually found himself in the street section in Ginza housing these luxurious brands. It was noticeable that there were fewer people in the stores compared to the bustling street. Here, renowned names like Louis Vuitton, Cartier, Bulgari, Tiffany & Co., and more, showcased their exquisite creations. Upon entering Cartier, Shin was promptly greeted by a well-dressed sales clerk who welcomed him with a warm smile. "I really liked that Panthère de Cartier watch," a casually dressed young man remarked to the attentive sales associate, who immediately began assisting him. Shin turned his gaze toward the young man, finding something oddly familiar about him. Clad in an ordinary white shirt, basketball shorts, and flip-flops, the young man exuded an American or Hawaiian style. While Shin sensed a trace of recognition, he refocused his attention on his mission to find the perfect ring for Myra. He even considered purchasing a variety of rings, allowing her to choose. However, as he had gotten to know Myra better, he understood her modest and unpretentious nature. Still, Shin couldn't be entirely certain. Women often concealed their true desires from their partners, occasionally indulging in more elegant and luxurious accessories, even someone as humble as Myra. As Shin perused the selections, the sales associate refrained from approaching him immediately, respecting customers' freedom to explore at their own pace. They preferred not to overwhelm Shin, understanding that Japanese customers, particularly those seeking luxury items, tended to be reserved and somewhat introverted. This unspoken rule changed only when a customer was already known to the sales associate, such as the casually dressed young man who stood out amidst the restrained and elegant atmosphere of the store. While Shin continued his search for the perfect ring, the casually dressed young man approached him with an exclamation of surprise, "Shinro." Startled by the sudden interruption, Shin shifted his attention to the young man in plain attire. He regarded the young man with a perplexed expression, trying to remember him. Seeing Shin's confusion, the young man quickly identified himself, saying, "I'm Hideki Kiyoshi, remember? We were classmates." Shin racked his memory, and after a few moments, recognition dawned. Hideki was known for his fascination with American culture, from music to basketball, and he often adopted an American-style casual approach to relationships. He believed in the informality of American interactions, including one-night stands and more. Thankfully, to the best of Shin's memories, Hideki hadn't ventured into the world of cannabis yet. With Hideki's identity confirmed, Shin greeted him with a friendly, "Hey, how have you been?" Hideki responded by enthusiastically clasping his arms around Shin's shoulders, exclaiming, "I'm doing great. What about you, bro? It's been a while since I heard from you." Hideki had a special fondness for Shinro, especially when they bonded over arcade games. Shin couldn't help but feel a sense of resignation in this encounter. Despite Hideki's unassuming attire, he came from a family with significant political influence. His father held a prestigious position as the Minister of Finance in the Japanese government. Hideki's mother, on the other hand, was an entrepreneur who owned bars and entertainment establishments catering to men throughout the Kanto region and its surrounding areas. With a wry smile, Shin replied, "I'm doing quite well." He couldn't help but ask, "What brings you to such a luxurious brand store? It's not like you at all." He chuckled, recalling Hideki's preference for simplicity and ordinary clothing. From what he remembered, Hideki would typically only venture into shoe stores featuring Nike sneakers endorsed by American basketball players. After buying a pair, he would wear them to school for show, changing his shoes daily. Once he was out of his school uniform, those sneakers would become mere decorations. How did Shin know all this? Hideki had shared these habits with him during their past conversations. Hideki heard Shin's question and quickly clarified, "It's not for me." He held his hands up in denial and explained, "I'm shopping for my older brother, it's his birthday tomorrow." Shin responded with a chuckle, "Ah, your four-eyed brother." Hideki joined in the laughter, nodding, "Hee, that's his style. He loves luxury." With that settled, Hideki turned to Shin with a hint of concern in his eyes and asked, "I heard you dropped out of school. Why?" Shin remained silent, his attention now fixed on the rings displayed behind the glass. The observant sales associates, familiar with Hideki's frequent visits to their store accompanied by different women, tactfully refrained from interrupting their conversation. Hideki trailed behind Shin, awaiting his response. He was genuinely concerned about his friend, Shin, and although he respected his silence, he still desired to truly understand the reason why Shin had abruptly left school. It had been 6 months since Shin's last appearance in the school. When Shin finally replied, he kept it succinct, saying, "I just got tired of school, there's no need to talk about it." Hideki absorbed the response and, with a sense of seriousness, inquired, "Was it because of the Kenshin gang?" After Shin ceased attending school, Hideki felt compelled to investigate the reasons behind his absence. As he delved deeper, he discovered unsettling details that suggested the Kenshin gang was covertly extorting money from Shin and subjecting him to physical abuse. While Hideki wasn't entirely certain about these claims, he was determined to verify their accuracy and confront the gang's leader, who happened to be around his age. However, his efforts ended in disappointment as he faced further mistreatment. Hideki refrained from seeking help or reporting the matter, given that the gang's leader had influential connections within the Yakuza. Rumors even circulated that the gang leader was the son of an Oyabun and hailed from a formidable Yakuza family. With this knowledge in mind, Hideki decided to complete high school in silence before enrolling in a university. Over time, he had let go of the idea of seeking revenge, especially for his friend. However, encountering Shin again brought back a resurgence of his dormant anger. Shin merely chuckled at Hideki's question and responded, "No, it's not about that. Just forget about it." Hideki sighed and shifted the conversation, asking, "Are you in search of a luxurious accessory here?" He made the change as he sensed the previous topic becoming personal and sensitive. Chapter 58, Luxury Rings. Ginza District. Cartier Store. Shin responded to Hideki, saying, "I'm looking for a ring for my fiancé." Hideki initially nodded in response, but his eyes widened in shock as he looked at Shin. "Fiancé?" He pointed at Shin in surprise. Shin chuckled and confirmed, "Yes." Hideki continued to look at him in shock and said, "You're so young, bro, and you're already preparing to get married." Since Shin was looking for a ring for his fiancé, it could only mean one thing: it's a marriage. Shin simply nodded. Hideki was someone who probably never planned to marry, so this was likely shocking to him. "Wow, bro! I didn't know you were into that." Hideki chuckled as he placed his hands on Shin's arms. "Let me help you find one," he offered. As they explored the selection of rings at Cartier, Shin searched for a luxurious ring while Hideki took on the role of a sales associate, seemingly knowledgeable about Cartier products. "Bro, if you want, this Cartier diamond yellow gold Nigeria ring is one of the most favored by women. Women tend to prefer luxurious looking things, especially those with gold and diamonds," Hideki explained. Shin chuckled and asked, "How did you know?" Hideki responded with a smile, "You know me, bro. I'm an expert in this." According to feedback from hundreds of women, 20% of them chose the Cartier diamond yellow gold Nigeria ring. Shin couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Only 20% chose this ring. He pointed to the golden ring adorned with white diamonds in surprise. Hideki nodded and added, "Indeed, it only made it to the top 3 list of women's choices." "Really?" Shin pondered, rubbing his chin in thought. Hideki then directed Shin's attention to another ring that appeared even more luxurious than the previous one. This ring was made of gold, with a prominent diamond prominently displayed. Hideki introduced, "That one is the Cartier Paris 1940 bomb diamond ring. It was favored by 30% of the women I've interacted with." Shin was rather taken aback by Hideki. He was genuinely keeping track of women's preferences and could even recall them from memory. Shin then examined the ring closely. There was no denying that it was captivating and exuded luxury. The diamond on the golden ring, though small, appeared quite large. It caught the light from the overhead lights, creating a captivating sparkle. However, Shin had doubts about whether Myra would appreciate it. From his perspective, Myra probably preferred unassuming yet elegant items. Something that appeared modest but was, in fact, sophisticated, luxurious, and costly. This was how Shin perceived Myra's taste. Hideki, curious, asked Shin, "What do you think?" Shin shook his head and replied, "No, I don't think my fiancé would like it." Hideki sighed and commented, "Really? That's unfortunate. This ring is the second most preferred among women. It's worth at least 3.4 million yen. Shin simply smiled and scratched his chin. Then, Hideki led him to one of the most expensive rings in the store. It was a panther-shaped diamond ring. Hideki introduced it, saying, "This is the Cartier 18K Panther diamond ring." Shin gazed at the ring in contemplation. "The price is approximately 3.7 million yen, Hideki began, but before he could say more, a sales associate approached him with the watch he had initially ordered. He turned to Shin and apologized, "Sorry, bro, I need to sign the paperwork for this watch and make the payment. I'll assist you in finding your engagement ring once I'm done." Another female sales associate, who had been nearby, observed Hideki and Shin, and she approached them respectfully. She bowed and said, "I'll be happy to help the young gentleman find his desired engagement ring." Hideki nodded and accompanied the sales associate who had approached him to complete his purchase. Shin acknowledged the female sales associate with a nod and provided her with detailed information about his fiancée's preferred ring. The woman nodded professionally and guided him to a ring that, as per Shin's description, appeared modest yet was undoubtedly luxurious and expensive. This is the Trinity Ring Classic in 18K white gold, 18K rose gold, and 18K yellow gold, set with 144 brilliant cut diamonds totaling 0.99 carats, the sales associate explained with expertise. Shin couldn't help but chastise himself internally for thinking that Hideki, the womanizer, was a professional. Now, he had a true understanding of what professionalism meant. He examined the Trinity Ring Classic, which appeared as if 3 rings were elegantly fused together, enhancing its overall aesthetic appeal. Noticing Shin's thoughtful gaze, the saleswoman proceeded to provide the price, saying, "It's 2,015,490 million yen, sir." Although Shin remained silent after hearing the price, the saleswoman didn't make any assumptions about whether he could afford it or not, given his association with Hideki, one of their regular customers. After contemplating for a moment, Shin spoke up, saying, "Let's continue looking." Upon hearing this, the saleswoman thought that the ring she had presented might have exceeded Shin's budget. Consequently, she guided him toward more affordable options, presenting them professionally. She did so without causing any embarrassment or awkwardness, respecting Shin's preferences. However, Shin's expression turned into a frown as she led him to the less expensive choices. Observing this, the saleswoman became concerned, fearing that even the less expensive options might be beyond Shin's budget. As she prepared to show him more budget-friendly rings, Shin suddenly interjected, "Price doesn't matter. Just show me the ones that will satisfy me." He said this to avoid any misunderstandings with the saleswoman, who appeared to be directing him toward less expensive choices. Upon hearing his words, the saleswoman was taken aback and felt remorseful for jumping to conclusions about the customer's budget. She realized that she had made an unfair judgment. Bowing apologetically, she said, "I apologize, sir." She apologized upon seeing Shin's furrowed brows and the unease in his expression, recognizing her mistake. Shin's expression softened, and he replied, "It's all right. It's just a minor matter." Chapter 59, Trinity Ring. Ginza Cartier Store. Shin followed the saleswoman as she led him through an array of luxurious rings. She guided him to the most opulent and expensive one, providing intricate details. "This is the Cartier Trinity Ring, a large model made of 18K white gold, 18K rose gold, and 18K yellow gold, adorned with 387 brilliant cut diamonds totaling 4.64 carats." The ring, despite its modest size, exuded elegance and extravagance, with the 3 interlocked rings embellished by dazzling diamonds. Shin's interest was piqued, and he considered that Myram might appreciate this piece. He inquired, "I'm interested in this one. How much does it cost?" The saleswoman, noticing Shin's fascination with the exquisite and captivating ring, replied with a warm smile, "It is priced at 6,659,880 million yen, sir." Although she refrained from making assumptions about Shin's budget, she discreetly observed his expression, trying to gauge whether he could afford it. Shin sensed the saleswoman's subtle scrutiny but responded with a reassuring smile, "All right, I'll take this one," as he gently massaged his chin, lost in thought. Upon laying eyes on the ring, he felt a strong connection to it, convinced it would adorn Myra's finger beautifully. He believed it would complement her style perfectly and saw no need to explore other high-end stores in search of a ring when he had found one that genuinely resonated with him for his beloved. The saleswoman couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised at Shin's quick decision to purchase the expensive ring, seemingly without much deliberation. "Very well, sir. However, we will still require your fiancé's specific ring size to ensure a perfect fit," the saleswoman replied, bowing gracefully and respectfully. Shin nodded and discreetly recalled Myra's ring finger or fourth finger's size, having measured it secretly while she slept in his embrace. The saleswoman inquired whether Shin preferred a private or open setting for discussing the paperwork and payment. She also asked for his name, to which Shin replied that an open room would suffice and provided his name. The saleswoman then escorted Shin to a room located deep within the Cartier store, where they would go over the details. Upon entering the room, Shin noticed several other Cartier customers present, with Hideki among them, engaged in conversation with a middle-aged woman dressed in a formal yet elegant suit. The saleswoman requested that Shin wait momentarily and gestured for him to take a seat on a plush sofa. Shin complied, nodding, and took in his surroundings. The room was spacious and inviting, with the soft murmur of conversations among the few people present as the only audible sound. In the distance, Hideki caught sight of Shin and waved to him. The middle-aged woman had already departed, leaving Hideki to proudly display the luxurious watch he had just purchased, neatly packaged in an opulent-looking small box for watches. Hideki approached Shin with a smile. "You seem to have found a suitable one without waiting for me," he said as he took a seat beside Shin. Shin simply smiled in response to Hideki's comment. Hideki's curiosity got the better of him as he leaned in closer and inquired, "So, what's the ring you've chosen?" Shin's smile widened as he shared the details of his selection. "I chose a ring, the Trinity ring, large model, 18K white gold." The description rolled off his tongue effortlessly. Hideki's eyes widened in surprise as he heard the specifics. "Bro! That is one expensive ring you've bought!" he exclaimed. Shin nodded, confident in his choice, and replied, "It will be worth the price." Hideki couldn't help but express his admiration. "Although I know you're the son of one of the richest men in Japan, I didn't expect you to be this generous." Shin's smile held a touch of mystery as he teased, "It seems you're not updated on the latest news, Hideki," he chuckled. Hideki's confusion was evident as he probed, "What do you mean?" Shin chose to keep the suspense, offering only a cryptic response, "Nothing." The saleswoman returned to Shin, presenting the ring nestled on a soft, plush pillow inside an open Cartier ring box. The Cartier Trinity ring, LM, was now on full display for both Hideki and Shin to admire. "Wow!" Hideki couldn't help but exclaim as he gazed at the Trinity ring LM. Despite not being deeply into luxurious items, he knew how to appreciate and admire their beauty. Other customers in the vicinity also turned their attention to the ring, drawn by Hideki's enthusiastic reaction. They were taken aback that someone was willing to buy such an exclusive and opulent ring, and they were even more surprised to see that it was a young man making the purchase. He must be from an influential or wealthy family, perhaps both, the customers thought in unison. "Mr. Suzuki, we're fortunate enough to have the ring in the same exact size as your fiancé," the saleswoman said as she held the ring up in front of Shin for his inspection. Shin touched the ring delicately and scrutinized it up close, its breathtaking and captivating beauty leaving a lasting impression. Hideki, too, leaned in for a closer look, appreciating the golden ring adorned with sparkling diamonds. The price and the sheer luxuriousness of the ring seemed to enhance its appeal, making it truly mesmerizing. "All right, I'll take this one," Shin decided with a resolute tone, reaching for his wallet. Hideki couldn't help but ask in a hushed tone, "Bro, didn't you bring cash?" Shin smiled as he replied, "No, I have a credit card." He retrieved a Resina Holdings Supreme card from his wallet. The saleswoman recognized it as a credit card. While the concept of credit cards wasn't as widely used as it would be in the future, many people were already using them, and stores had started to accept them. Credit card terminals were becoming more common in various places. Shin asked the saleswoman if it was acceptable, and she nodded in agreement. Leading Shin and Hideki to the store's credit card terminal, the saleswoman initiated the payment process. Hideki couldn't resist his curiosity and asked Shin, "Hey, how much money can a card like that hold?" Shin smiled as he explained, "Around millions of yen." Hideki was taken aback by the sum and contemplated, it seems like I need to get a card like yours. Carrying large amounts of cash is such a hassle. Shin chuckled at Higeki's reaction and teased, don't you enjoy that flashy style? After all, you idolize American rappers. Higeki joined in the laughter as he admitted, true that. Chapter 60, Ideas. Ginza. Cartier store. In the distance, the customers and Higeki observed as the saleswoman efficiently processed the payment through a bulky credit card terminal. The terminal was connected to a telephone line, allowing it to communicate with the credit card company's computer mainframe. With a deft motion, the saleswoman swiped Shin's credit card through the terminal. The device read the magnetic strip on the back of the card and transmitted this information to the credit card company's mainframe computer. The mainframe computer swiftly verified the authenticity of Shin's credit card, authorizing the transaction. As a result, millions of yen were deducted from Shin's credit card to purchase the Trinity ring. The saleswoman congratulated Shin on the successful purchase. For the onlookers, this payment method appeared remarkably smooth and convenient, requiring no checks or cash. However, from Shin's perspective, the credit card payment process felt frustratingly slow. After all, it was 1990, and such transactions were still in their early stages. While he couldn't do much about it now, he contemplated the idea of introducing PayPal in this world in the future. Online shopping was gaining popularity, especially in prosperous countries like the USA, Europe, and Japan. A more efficient payment method could disrupt the credit card industry, which offered slow processing and charged high fees. However, Shin's current focus remained on his company's research and development of handheld consoles. He knew he could explore the idea of setting up an online video game store that accepted PayPal payments in due time. It was then that he remembered Amazon from his previous life and wondered if it existed in this world. Recalling the founder of Amazon, a data-driven individual with a control the data, control the world mindset, Shin pondered the potential impact such a company could have in this world. The saleswoman, noticing Shin lost in thought, gently inquired, Mr. Suzuki, we will begin customizing the ring. May I ask for your fiancé's name? We can engrave it on the ring. When Shin remained unresponsive, she continued, it would be helpful if you could write her name and your address on this paper, sir. She presented a sheet of paper and a pen to Shin. Shin snapped back to attention and nodded in response to the saleswoman's question. He took the pen and inscribed both his and Myra's names. Thank you for choosing Cartier, Mr. Suzuki. We will deliver the ring to your address in a few hours, the saleswoman said with a gracious smile, offering a formal bow. Thank you, Shin replied with a polite smile, reciprocating the bow. Once they concluded their business, Shin and Higeki exited the store together. Higeki scratched the back of his head and remarked, I still can't believe it. You're finally getting married. Higeki gazed at Shin with a complex expression, and he continued, don't forget to invite me, bro, patting Shin's shoulder as he spoke. Of course, Shin replied with a smile. Despite Higeki's flaws, such as his womanizing tendencies, he had admirable qualities as a loyal and considerate friend. Thanks, bro. Higeki cheerfully replied. No problem, Shin said, maintaining his smile. As they strolled toward the parking lot, they engaged in light conversation. Keep me updated, bro, Higeki requested as he approached a striking motorcycle. He offered, want a ride, bro? Shin shook his head in response, not particularly fond of motorcycles. He recalled a near accident from his previous life when he had almost been crushed by a truck and another incident when he had skidded on a slippery road. These experiences had left him with a lasting motorcycle-related trauma. No. Higeki appeared puzzled. He remembered that in the past, Shin had dreamed of owning a motorcycle but couldn't due to his strained relationship with his father. From Higeki's perspective, witnessing Shin spend millions at Cartier suggested a newfound closeness with his father. Higeki didn't press for more information and simply stated, all right. Feel free to reach out anytime with the phone number I gave you." With those words, he revved up his motorcycle and rode away. Shin shook his head, still smiling, as he made his way to the parking lot where his car was parked. He opened the car's door and drove off. Meanwhile, in Midtown Manhattan, New York City, the headquarters of the Newland building played host to an important meeting. The struggling Newland company was discussing Kishin's interest in acquiring Tetris. Archie Scott, the CEO of Newland, was deep in discussion with his employees when his assistant entered the room. Archie shifted his attention to the assistant, Alec Foreman, who reported, "Sir, I conducted research on the company called Kishin Company in Japan. I found that they are not listed in the Tokyo Stock Exchange, and there is limited information available about them." Archie's expression turned grave as he inquired, "Is there anything else?" Alec Foreman shook his head as he continued, "There's more, sir. While our information on Kishin Company is limited, we did uncover that Kishin is a Tokyo-based gaming company. They began by distributing arcade machines to various stores and malls in Tokyo. However, they eventually shifted away from the arcade business and focused on selling a product called the Famicom, which is akin to an arcade machine but designed for easy connection to home televisions." Archie, who had initially been solemn, became quite intrigued. "An arcade system that connects easily to home television? Can you provide more details?" Alec nodded and explained, "It's somewhat similar to Atari's bulky and large console but in a more compact form." He placed an image on the meeting room table, displaying a Kishin Famicom. Everyone in the room leaned in, their interest piqued. One image showed a close-up of the Famicom, while another displayed a television screen with Super Mario Bros. Running. Alec then distributed papers containing information about the Kishin Famicom and its video games. Archie and the others read through the details with curiosity. Archie couldn't help but wonder aloud, "I wonder if we could create a similar console." Lucas Blurk, an investor in Newland, couldn't contain his laughter and promptly burst Archie's dream bubble. "Archie, we can't even cover our rent, let alone embark on developing such technology." Archie and the rest of the attendees joined in the laughter, realizing the impracticality of such a venture given their current financial situation. Chapter 61, Unexpected Chains of Events. New York. LaGuardia Airport. Oreo Masayoshi's flight touched down at LGA. He descended the airplane's stairs, and once he set foot on the ground, he checked his phone to see if anyone from Newland had messaged or contacted him. Finding no messages, he pocketed his phone and made his way into the bustling airport. Once inside, he decided to grab a meal at a nearby fast food restaurant while he waited. During his meal, he attempted to contact the Newland company. Beep beep. Oreo waited patiently as the phone continued to ring. He was quite sure he had paid a Japanese telecom company for international service. This was his first time traveling abroad, so many things still felt unfamiliar. He had been chosen as Kishin's representative because of his proficiency in English and his capabilities. As doubts about his telecom service started to creep in, someone finally answered the call. "Hello, this is Alec Foreman." Oreo felt relieved that someone had picked up and quickly responded in English, "Hello, this is Oreo Masayoshi. I'm the representative of Kishin, and I've just arrived at LaGuardia Airport." Alec Foreman on the other end sounded surprised, "Oh, Mr. Masayoshi." He hadn't saved Oreo's number in his phone, and he added, "I apologize for not being able to assist you upon your arrival or welcome you in person. Our company is currently facing some issues." Oreo smiled modestly and replied, "No worries, I've just arrived." Deep down, he made a mental note that Newland's situation might be worse than what Kishin had anticipated. He planned to use this to his advantage during negotiations later. Alec was unaware that the cunning Japanese was already scheming, and his voice on the other end was tinged with embarrassment as he continued, "On behalf of Newland, I sincerely apologize." "It's truly okay," Oreo said with a smile, but his complex mind was already formulating a plan to reduce Tetris's purchasing rights. "If it's all right with you, we'll head over to you right away, sir," Alex said, still feeling embarrassed for his company. "All right, I'm currently still at LaGuardia Airport. I'll patiently wait," Oreo replied with a smile as he continued eating his hamburger. "Understood," Alex's voice responded from the other end of the phone. Japan, Tokyo, October 26, 1990. The business world was suddenly abuzz as the corporate giant Suzuki Group unexpectedly announced a press conference to be held at Keidanren Kaiken in Chiyoda, Tokyo. Keidanren Kaiken was a Japanese federation building dedicated to promoting the Japanese economy and businesses. Such a venue was typically reserved for use by a corporation or company when they had a groundbreaking announcement to make or important upcoming products and plans that would significantly impact the Japanese business world, if not reshape it. Normally, companies held press conferences annually, and Suzuki Group had already held one not long ago. It would be months before their next scheduled press conference, yet they were now planning to hold one much earlier than anticipated. Numerous media outlets and journalists were eager to obtain information from Suzuki Group regarding why they had decided to hold a press conference ahead of schedule. However, the information they received was vague, and the Suzuki Group representatives remained tight-lipped about the details. Tokyo, Minato Ward, Roppongi District. Tora Headquarters. Inside the Tora Board of Directors meeting, Chairman Asahi Tanaka wore a solemn expression, mirroring the gravity of the situation felt by the rest of the board members. Except for Vice Chairman Jin, who was likely taking pleasure in Asahi's situation, but still maintained a hypocritical solemn expression like the rest. "The Suzuki Group has announced that they will hold a press conference at the Keidanren Kaiken," said one of the board of directors, Ihara Yoshikin, with a solemn tone. He added, "I have a feeling it's about a video game console." Chairman Asahi nodded in agreement. "I share the same thought. However, I didn't anticipate they would make such a big fuss and attempt to steal the spotlight with a sudden press conference," he said thoughtfully. In all honesty, Suzuki's move was quite cunning. They were preparing to hold a press conference for their imitation Famicom product, acting as if they were the pioneers in this business. The fact that Kishin, the original company behind the Famicom, hadn't even scheduled a press conference yet made Suzuki Group's actions appear rather audacious. To make matters more intriguing, the CEO of Kishin happened to be the son of the Suzuki Group's chairman. One of the board of directors expressed their disapproval, saying, "They have no shame. Kishin, the company that originally introduced the Famicom, hasn't even announced a press conference yet, and Suzuki Group is already poised to steal their thunder." Another director chimed in, "But isn't the CEO of Kishin the son of the Suzuki Group chairman?" One of them nodded and added, "That's correct. At first, we suspected that Kishin and Suzuki might be working together to trap us, Tora Corp., into a loss." "Yes, that's exactly what concerns me," voiced another director. "There's no doubt that the Kishin CEO is the son of the Suzuki Group chairman. However, there's no need for everyone to fret. I'm almost certain that the father and son aren't on the best of terms," Chairman Asahi asserted confidently. The board of directors reluctantly nodded, pushing their worries aside for the time being. However, Vice Chairman Jin remained unconvinced and questioned, "How can you say that? You don't have any proof to be so confident, Chairman Asahi Tanaka." The other directors quietly agreed with the vice chairman's skepticism. Chairman Asahi seemed to anticipate Vice Chairman Jin's objection as he grinned and declared, "Hehe, you want proof? I'll provide you with proof." He gestured to someone, causing the room to darken as the lights were turned off. Then, a projector in the room illuminated the whiteboard, projecting a video. In the video, Vice Chairman Jin was shown bribing Chairman Asahi's secretary, and Vice Chairman's voice could be heard as he appeared to be conversing with Chairman Asahi's secretary. "Retrieve all of Asahi Tanaka's confidential files and hand them over to me, especially the ones that would completely tarnish his image." The vice chairman's voice was hushed, but he seemed unaware that the secretary had a hidden microphone concealed on her person. The board of directors, especially Vice Chairman Jin, were left in shock. Dig up any scandals on him, and if possible, seduce him while secretly recording it. I'll pay you more for that, Vice Chairman Jin's voice in the video added in a hushed tone. The board of directors stared at Vice Chairman Jin in disbelief, while Chairman Asahi observed with a cunning smile. Vice Chairman Jin realized the situation wasn't in his favor, so he quickly raised his hand and shook his head in denial, saying, "No. I didn't say that. It's a mistake." Chairman Asahi chuckled and stated, "It's clearly you in the video, Vice Chairman Jin. And I'm certain it's your voice." Vice Chairman Jin began to sweat, feeling helpless. He glanced at some directors on the board who were his friends, but they all turned away when he looked at them. "Damn it! Are you all abandoning me now?" Vice Chairman Jin roared in anger. Chairman Asahi's expression turned serious as he said, "Vice Chairman Jin, I have more evidence beyond this video. Evidence of your involvement in meddling with our contract partnership with Kishin and more. I, along with the entire company, can press criminal charges against you." Vice Chairman Jin shook his head in denial, stammering, "No. That's not true." Chairman Asahi calmly smiled, sensing an opportunity, and possibly the rest of the board did as well. He stated, "No. It's absolutely true. Not only can we file criminal charges against you, but I and the board of directors can also decide to seize your company's shares." The board of directors, even those who were Vice Chairman Jin's friends, stared at him as if he were a delicious meal. They envisioned themselves sharing the spoils, dividing the Vice Chairman's shares among them, Chairman Asahi, and the board. Vice Chairman Jin froze, his expression shifting from shock to dark realization. Despair slowly took hold as he muttered repeatedly, "This can't be real." Chairman Asahi and the board of directors saw that Vice Chairman Jin's emotional and mental state were deteriorating, so they called for personnel to escort him out of the room. Chairman Asahi maintained a friendly and amiable smile throughout, but the board of directors couldn't shake the chill running down their spines. One of the directors who was a friend of Vice Chairman Jin discreetly texted another director who shared his affiliation with the Vice Chairman. He sent the message to lighten the mood. As the recipient received the message and discreetly checked his phone to distract himself from the tension in the room, he found the text, "Chairman Asahi Tanaka is more like a Kishin, fierce god. He embodies the name Kishin better than the Kishin company themselves, haha." Reading this, the director's mood lightened, bringing a hint of humor to the otherwise tense atmosphere. "I've noticed that some readers have expressed their frustration about the main character taking 4 chapters choosing a ring. As an apology, in addition to this bonus chapter, I'll be releasing 3 chapters at the usual time of 12 AM UTC plus 08. If we manage to reach the top 15 or even higher in the rankings, I'll release even more chapters." Chapter 62, Successful Purchase of Tetris Rights. New York. LaGuardia Airport. At the fast food restaurant, Oreo was quietly enjoying his meal when a young American approached him curiously and asked, "Are you Oreo Masayoshi?" Oreo glanced at the young American in slight surprise and replied, "Oh, you're Alec 4, I forgot." Oreo scratched the back of his head, realizing he had forgotten Alec's last name. Alec just smiled and introduced himself, saying, "Alec Foreman. Nice to meet you," as he offered his hand for a handshake. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Oreo bowed and accepted the handshake. After their brief introduction, Alec Foreman led Oreo to an ordinary-looking car. Alec concealed his embarrassment about the older and more conventional car he was using for this business trip, maintaining a stoic expression. Alec drove them to the Newland building. Newland HQ. During the ride, Alec engaged in light conversation with Oreo. They eventually arrived at the Newland building. Stepping out of the car, Alec guided Oreo to a private room within the Newland building. Inside, Archie Scott, the CEO of Newland, entered the room and spotted Oreo. Oreo promptly stood up and bowed politely, but Archie simply smiled and reciprocated with a bow of his own. Although Oreo had already devised a plan on how to lower the cost of acquiring the Tetris rights, he still felt a bit nervous. After all, he was in a foreign land. Archie got engaged in light conversation with Oreo first and even offered him a coffee. Afterward, they delved into the real negotiation, with Oreo, Archie, and Alec engaging in heated discussions about the price of the Tetris rights. "We'll sell the Tetris rights for $3 million, Archie stated firmly. Oreo didn't back down and responded, "$3 million? Isn't that too expensive? That game wasn't even that popular." He chuckled as he made this point, and even Alec began to feel a bit anxious because what Oreo had mentioned was true. But Archie stood his ground and argued, "Our game was once a global sensation, and it continues to be played to this day. I believe the price is fair." Oreo shook his head and countered, "That's true. It was popular in the past, but that's not the case now. The past and the present are different, and it's clear that it's not worth the price you're insisting on anymore." Archie clenched his hand and said, "All right, 2.6 million, gritting his teeth, as if displaying a hint of hesitation. In reality, he was acting to elicit sympathy and portraying himself as stubborn, hoping to gauge the other party's reaction and secure an agreement. "Still too expensive," Oreo shook his head, countering with, "We can offer $300,000. Archie remained unconvinced and mentioned, "I've heard that your company, Kishin, is making a lot of money from developing video games." He observed Oreo and noticed a subtle flinch, chuckling inwardly. He continued, "Now that Kishin wishes to acquire the rights to our Tetris game, it must have plans to enhance the game, resell it in Japan, and potentially profit from it. I can see that the Tetris rights hold significant value for Kishin." While Oreo had anticipated this line of discussion, he couldn't help but feel a touch of anxiety hearing that the other party was well informed about Kishin's situation. He wasn't the only one who had come prepared. "You're correct. Kishin aims to improve the Tetris game, but we cannot be certain whether it will truly benefit our company. Business is unpredictable, and there are no guarantees. We cannot take unnecessary risks," Oreo explained, choosing his words carefully. Archie fell silent, contemplating strategies to secure a high price for selling the Tetris rights. It was the only option he had to save Newland. Suddenly, Archie remembered something and stated, "If Kishin refuses to accept our offer of $2.6 million, we might consider negotiating with Tora Electronics, one of Kishin's competitors." He issued this statement as a bluff, hoping to gauge Oreo's reaction. Oreo, however, seemed flustered, tapping nervously on the table. Archie and Alec shared a discreet glance, recognizing that they had stumbled upon a potential vulnerability. In Oreo's mind, he recalled the words of his young boss, "Remember, we must acquire the Tetris rights at all costs. Losing them would be a significant setback for the company." At the time, Oreo had taken those words lightly, assuming it would be easy to secure the rights from a struggling company. But now, facing the prospect of negotiations with Tora Electronics, Kishin's competitors, Oreo felt the mounting pressure and briefly lost his composure before regaining his composure. "All right, how about $1 million? Oreo proposed, raising the offer. Archie and Alec exchanged knowing glances, sensing they had discovered Oreo's vulnerability. Though they wouldn't exploit it fully, they knew they could capitalize on it, especially as the price had risen from $300,000 to $1 million. $2.6 million, Archie repeated firmly. But Archie and Alec weren't the only ones skilled in cunning negotiation tactics. Oreo was well aware that he had briefly lost control of his expression earlier, and he suspected that the other party might try to exploit this vulnerability. To counteract this, he deliberately adopted a stern, teeth-gritting expression, playing his part convincingly. Both Archie and Alec observed his performance and momentarily became concerned. $1.5 million is our absolute budget for acquiring the Tetris rights. Oreo declared with remarkable hesitation and reluctance, striving to persuade Archie and Alec that this was truly the limit of their budget. Archie and Alec exchanged a glance and collectively decided not to push their luck too far. With apparent reluctance and gritted teeth, they reluctantly conceded, "All right, $1.5 million it is." Oreo maintained his downcast expression, but internally, he breathed a sigh of relief. He had managed to lower the cost, even though it wasn't as low as he had hoped. Nevertheless, he understood that in life, things don't always go according to plan. Ultimately, Oreo was relieved that his acting skills had successfully deceived the other party, and with the price agreement reached, both parties proceeded to sign the contract. Finally, Kishin Company officially acquired the Tetris rights in this world. Chapter 63, Surprise. Kishin HQ. October 27, 1990, Saturday. Our Famicom sales have reached 1 million. Li Han exclaimed joyfully, while the employees in the meeting room erupted in celebration. The room filled with happiness as they raised their bubbling beer bottles, shaking and playfully spraying foam on each other's faces. Amid the festivities, Shin wore a continuous smile. He had initiated the idea of celebrating when Famicom sales reached 1 million, and he could feel Myra's hand touching his own. He turned to her with a smile. As everyone rejoiced, Shin and Myra locked eyes, the jubilant employees fading into the background, creating a seemingly tranquil moment. Their gaze was interrupted as a spray of beer hit Shin's face. The employee responsible looked slightly worried, fearing trouble, but Shin simply smiled, grabbed another unopened beer bottle, shook it, and playfully sprayed it in the direction of the employee, causing laughter all around. Myra joined in the merriment and embraced the celebration. After the festivities concluded, Shin invited Myra into his office. "It's Sunday tomorrow. How about we tour Kyoto?" Shin asked Myra with a smile. "So suddenly?" Myra looked at Shin with confusion, considering they still needed to plan for the creation of their Famicom 16-bit system. "I suddenly have the urge to experience Kyoto's scenery. After all, it was Japan's former capital," Shin replied with a smile. "Really?" Myra gazed at Shin. They had grown so close that they could now understand each other, but she suspected there was more to it. As time passed, on Sunday morning, Shin and Myra boarded a bullet train to travel from Tokyo to Kyoto. They engaged in conversation and enjoyed snacks to pass the time and keep themselves entertained during the journey. In just 2 hours and 30 minutes, they arrived in Kyoto. Shin and Myra disembarked from the train. Kyoto train station bustled with people, most of whom were likely tourists, including some foreigners. Shin and Myra hailed a taxi to reach the Jun district. In just about 5 minutes, they arrived at their destination, with Shin settling the fare at 1,500 yen. Jun district was a renowned tourist attraction in Kyoto. Upon their arrival, Shin and Myra spotted numerous tourists, females dressed in kimonos, while the males wore montsuki. Interestingly, many of the people donning these traditional Japanese garments were foreigners. The architecture of the buildings resembled ancient Japan, a stark contrast to the urban landscape Shin and Myra were accustomed to. Myra smiled, feeling that their decision to explore new places occasionally was the right choice, especially after dedicating herself to Shin's company. Shin and Myra strolled side by side until they reached Kimono Yamashihara, where they both changed into traditional Japanese attire. Myra adorned herself in a graceful kimono, while Shin donned a distinguished montsuki. Completing their ensembles, they even wore traditional Japanese geta sandals. Walking through the streets of Jun felt like a journey back in time, and Shin and Myra reveled in the immersive experience. They leisurely explored the area before deciding to dine at Kikusen, indulging in traditional Japanese cuisine before heading to Kawai Shrine. Hand in hand, Shin and Myra entered the shrine and inscribed their wishes on the mirror-shaped ima. To their surprise, they had written the exact same wish, to live and grow old together with our loved ones. This coincidence brought a blush to Myra's cheeks, while Shin simply smiled and chuckled. Following their visit to the shrine, they ventured to Kumo no Komei's hut. Although they could only admire it from the outside, they could glimpse the treasures within the works of Kumo no Komei, including art and poetry. Kumo no Komei made the decision to renounce the world after enduring the tumultuous politics and society of his time. He had borne witness to a series of natural and social catastrophes, including the Genpei War, the Great Fire of Kyoto, and the Great Plague of 1206. These experiences had left him disillusioned with the world of politics and society. Following their exploration, Shin and Myra purchased souvenirs before continuing their journey. Shin then decided to visit the Kinkakuji Temple. After a while, they arrived at the Kinkakuji Temple, and in the distance, they beheld the three-story temple. The area featured a tranquil pond and was adorned with a variety of plants and trees, including cherry trees, maple trees, and lotus flowers, enhancing the already mesmerizing scene. Shin and Myra marveled at the sight as they approached the temple. Though they couldn't enter it, they admired its exterior. Many tourists were capturing the temple and its captivating surroundings in photographs, creating a chorus of voices. Amid the crowd, Shin gently took Myra's soft hand, and she didn't mind as they continued to explore together. As afternoon approached, Shin led Myra to Kicho Arashiyama Honton, a renowned high-end traditional Japanese restaurant in Kyoto. Myra was surprised by the choice, and as they entered, the staff bowed respectfully. One of the staff members guided them to a private room that Shin had reserved in advance. Inside the Kinkakuji room, they settled on tatami mats woven from rice straw, finding them remarkably comfortable. A waitress entered the room and explained the dishes, after which Shin and Myra placed their orders. A sake sommelier also joined them, inquiring about their sake preferences. They selected Dasai 45, and the sommelier left to serve it. "I love the ambience of ancient Japan here," Myra commented, reclining on the tatami mats. "I knew you'd appreciate it," Shin replied with a smile. They slid open the shoji door and gazed at the serene view outside, finding it profoundly peaceful. "It's refreshing to experience this tranquility, especially when we're usually in the noisy and bustling city," Myra remarked, smiling. Shin and Myra engaged in light conversation as they awaited their dishes and sake. After a while, the sliding door opened, and the waitstaff entered with their dishes. They displayed the food on the table with precision. After placing the dishes, they formally bowed to Shin and Myra before leaving, quietly closing the door behind them. Shin and Myra savored their meal, with Myra enjoying her food while Shin discreetly watched her, seemingly waiting for something special to occur. As Myra delicately used her chopsticks to enjoy her sashimi, a sudden yelp of surprise escaped her lips as she picked up a piece. Shin couldn't help but chuckle slyly as he inquired, "What's wrong?" Startled, Myra gazed at Shin, her words stumbling, Shin. "There's a golden ring beneath my sashimi." She gently set down her chopsticks and displayed the ring for Shin to see. "Really?" Shin's chuckle continued as he questioned. Myra nodded and explained, "The chefs might have accidentally left it here," as she offered the ring to Shin. However, as she extended it toward him, Shin's mischievous smile widened, leaving Myra feeling a sense of unease. "Why are you smiling?" Myra asked suspiciously, and she noticed Shin's grin growing broader. Shin replied with a hint of excitement, "Just take a closer look at the ring yourself." "Take a closer look?" Myra queried, her confusion deepening as she followed his suggestion and examined the ring more closely. The ring featured an intricate design, with 3 interwoven bands adorned with diamonds. She exclaimed, "This ring looks incredibly luxurious. It must be quite valuable," as she turned to Shin. Shin simply nodded and encouraged her, "Take an even closer look." Myra felt even more perplexed by Shin's insistence. She believed she had already scrutinized it thoroughly. However, she complied with his request, examining the ring with greater scrutiny. It was then that she noticed an engraving on the ring's hallmark, a name in fancy Japanese script, Myra and Shin. Myra froze, Her eyes locked onto the engraving in sheer disbelief. If she hadn't grasped Shin's intentions by now, she would have considered herself ignorant and foolish. Her gaze shifted to Shin, her emotions swirling within her, complex and profound. Yet, her feelings were far from sadness, they overflowed with uncontainable joy. For a while, she had harbored doubts about whether Shin would fulfill his promise, but now, she stood deeply moved by his heartfelt proposal. The image I had in mind for Myra's appearance matches my Patreon profile picture. Chapter 64, Coincidence. Komata Komatsucho, Kyoto. Nintendo headquarters. The CEO, Tempaku Yamamoto, who was already 58 years old, sat down with his son to examine the new Lego set from the rival company, Kishin Merchandise. What a brilliant and noble idea! Why didn't I think of this sooner? Remarked the son beside the CEO. Takuza, let's not shower too much praise on our competitor's product. Tempaku said, although he couldn't help but admire it as he stroked his chin. Takuza chuckled and replied, true, but with Kishin entering the toy market, who will buy our toys now? You don't appear to be concerned, Tempaku remarked, a bit surprised. Why should I be? Worrying won't change anything, Takuza said with a smile, shaking his head. With that attitude, I'm amazed Erika hasn't left you yet, Tempaku said as he settled into his office chair. She's head over heels for me. My relaxed personality is part of the charm, Takuza teased. He added with a smirk, and what about your second wife, Narumi? Is she content with an older man like you? Tempaku snorted, I may look older on the outside, but if you saw my muscles, you'd know I'm stronger than you. Takuza burst into laughter. Haha, you certainly know how to lighten the mood, old man. Tempaku appeared provoked and seemed on the verge of stripping off his suit to demonstrate his muscular physique to Takuza. Hey, old man! Stop what you're doing! It's not good for my eyes. Takuza abruptly ceased his laughter, urgently imploring his father to halt his impromptu strip show. I'll prove it to you, brat! My body has more muscles than your pudgy, jiggling stomach. Tempaku exclaimed, genuinely considering disrobing. However, Takuza rushed over and managed to prevent him, resulting in an impromptu wrestling match between the two. Outside the office, the commotion from the father and son reached the hallway. Those two are at it again, Erika said helplessly. Narumi, a 30-year-old woman, laughed gracefully. They do share the same genes, after all. A slender man nearby asked with concern, is the CEO going to be all right in there? Narumi simply smiled, unworried. Don't worry. I know my husband well. Dash. You're quite impressively strong, you brat, Tempaku chuckled. You're strong too, old man. You've still got it even in your old age, Takuza replied with a smile, feeling relieved that his father's health was holding up well. Later, Takuza turned to his father and said, don't worry too much about the Kishin Lego, father. I'll find a way to compete with their product, offering reassurance with a smile. Tempaku simply smiled in response, oh, I'm not worried, you brat, he chuckled. However, deep down, Tempaku was already formulating a plan to ensure his company's survival in the face of this formidable competitor. Takuza smiled knowingly at his father's words, understanding the potential headache that this Lego situation could become. Considering the estimated Lego sales and the advertising on Kishin's anime program on Asahi TV, daily sales had soared to an astronomical 13,000 units. Takuza nodded to his father and stated, very well, I'll begin by investigating Kishin merchandise before developing a strategy. Recalling Sun Tzu's wisdom, he continued, Sun Tzu said, know your enemy first, then you will know yourself, and you will win 100 times every time. Tempaku chimed in, the CEO of Kishin merchandise doesn't matter, it's the parent company behind it that we need to understand. Takuza agreed, I'm aware of that, but I still need to track the movements of Kishin merchandise. As Takuza bowed to leave, Tempaku suddenly remembered something and urgently called out, "Wait, Takuza!" Takuza was taken aback by his father's sudden outburst and turned to face him in surprise. Tempaku suddenly spoke up, "Before you go, your uncle Asahi has already provided me with a photo of the owner of Kishin Merchandise parent company." With that, he opened his office desk drawer and retrieved a photograph. Takuza was taken aback. They already had a photo of the mastermind? Takuza approached his father, who handed him the photograph. Tempaku commented, "It's rather unexpected, but the CEO of Kishin Merchandise parent company, the one who initiated it all, is a young man." He scratched the back of his head in bemusement. Takuza nodded as he examined the photograph. It displayed a black-haired young man. "Wait. Why does that face seem so familiar?" His eyes suddenly widened in shock. Isn't this the young man I helped?" Takuza thought in disbelief. Tempaku noticed his son's astonishment and chuckled, "I know what you mean. He looks too young. When I first saw it was a young man, I had my doubts, but according to your uncle Asahi's investigation, it's indeed accurate." Tempaku assumed his son was surprised by Shin's youthful appearance. Takuza gazed earnestly at the photo of Shin and asked, "Father, can we trust this information?" He found it hard to believe that the struggling young man from his past memory had risen to such swift and remarkable success, nearly taking the business world by storm with his exceptional products. Tempaku nodded, affirming, "The information is accurate. It came from Asahi Tanaka, after all. He's the chairman of a major corporation." He glanced at his son, who seemed deeply engrossed in the photo, and sensing his son's confidence might be shaken, he added with concern, "Don't dwell too much on that young man. Your uncle Asahi mentioned that the young man is named Shinro Suzuki, the son of Shiro Suzuki, the chairman of the Suzuki Group." Takuza, already shocked, found this revelation surprising. After all, his initial impression of Shinro was that he struggled to secure funding for his startup. Now, it turned out he came from a wealthy family. Takuza chuckled, looking at his father, and remarked, "Don't worry, father. I know what you're thinking. You must be wondering if my confidence is affected because someone younger than me is more successful." Takuza locked eyes with his father, who initially tried to conceal his guilt but couldn't hide it. Seeing this, Takuza reassured him, "Don't fret, old man. I'm not that kind of man." With that, he walked away, holding the photo. Tempaku smiled helplessly at his son's straightforwardness. Erika spotted her husband emerging from the CEO's office and greeted him with a warm smile. Takuza acknowledged his stepmother, Narumi, with a respectful bow and formal greeting, "Hello." Narumi simply nodded in response. They engaged in light conversation for a while before Takuza awkwardly bid farewell, "We'll be on our way now, Mom." He felt a bit uncomfortable using the term mom for a woman just a bit older than him, eager to leave with Erika as he had something important to discuss with her. Narumi seemed to understand and nodded in acknowledgement. After Takuza and Erika departed, Narumi couldn't help but chuckle at Takuza's apparent haste to get away from her presence. "Am I that intimidating? Why is he acting so unusually today?" she mused with amusement. As Takuza and Erika exited the building, Erika couldn't help but notice Takuza's flustered demeanor. She knew he felt somewhat awkward around Narumi, but this seemed different. "Takuza, why do you seem so flustered back there? I've seen you be awkward around her, but this is the first time you've been this flustered," Erika inquired, puzzled. Takuza shook his head in denial. "No, I'm not flustered," he claimed. Erika looked at him with confusion. "Then why were you acting so strangely and in such a hurry back there?" she asked, genuinely perplexed. Takuza grinned and explained, "The reason I was in a hurry is because I discovered something interesting today." Intrigued, Erika gazed at him, prompting him to continue. Takuza nodded and proceeded to recount his encounter in the CEO's office, sharing the information about Shinro Suzuki and passing her the photo. Erika's eyes widened in genuine surprise as she listened to the unexpected revelation and examined the photo in shock. Chapter 65, LEGO's popularity. While Kishin Famicom and Tora VG 16-bit have captured the attention of many, a new and emerging toy has also garnered the interest of people in the Kanto region. A middle-aged man named Akitora Tsuruhama ventured into the streets to purchase a LEGO set for his son. His son had been persistently urging him to buy one after seeing an advertisement during the Legend of Zelda anime. However, as Akitora entered the section of the street where the Kishin merchandise store was situated, he was taken aback. The store was already bustling with people. This surprised him because he worked as a salesman at the Tora store, and on his daily commute, he often passed by the Kishin merchandise store. From what he remembered since its opening, no one had shown much interest in their products. But now, it had become so popular that the sales associates were unable to assist the throngs of customers. Many people were either purchasing Super Mario Bros. Or Link toy items, as well as Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, the characters from Kishin video games. Clearly, the Kishin IP was in high demand. However, the current surge of customers was primarily due to LEGO, which had managed to outperform all these action figures and toy sales since its initial release. Akitora rushed into the store and noticed that Kishin staff members were carrying stacks of LEGO boxes, drawing the attention of onlookers as they arranged the units on the shelves. "Mister, can I buy that one?" suddenly inquired an 8-year-old child, standing before one of the staff members who was placing LEGO boxes on the shelves. The child's parents, standing behind him, watched with hopeful expressions. Other customers observed this scene, their emotions mixed. While some were touched by the child's enthusiasm, others suspected that the child's parents were using this tactic to secure a LEGO box ahead of others. The staff member the child had approached was a young man who could only offer a helpless smile in response, saying, "Certainly, you can buy one." "Yay!" The child was ecstatic as the staff handed him the LEGO box unit featuring the Legend of Zelda design. However, the child shook his head and pointed to a specific LEGO design, the box adorned with images of Super Mario Bros., the castle, princess, and mushrooms. The staff nodded and provided him with that particular design. Subsequently, the child's parents smiled as they paid for the LEGO set at the counter. Other customers, initially hesitant and embarrassed to interrupt the staff arranging the LEGO boxes on the shelves, now felt it was better to act quickly after witnessing the child's successful purchase. Observing this, Akitora was determined not to be left behind and promptly approached the staff setting up the LEGO units. Meanwhile, customers who weren't interested in LEGO but were purchasing stuffed toys and figurines watched the competition to buy LEGO unfold. "Look at these people going crazy," a young man exclaimed to his girlfriend. His girlfriend simply chuckled and said, "Weren't you just as excited when Kishin released the Legend of Zelda video game?" The young man blushed and replied, "It's different." "How can it be different?" his girlfriend continued to tease. Meanwhile, Akitora finally managed to secure a LEGO box unit featuring the Legend of Zelda design for his son. Finally, Akitora sighed with relief as he took the LEGO box unit to the counter and purchased it with a sense of happiness. To be honest, he didn't buy this LEGO solely because his son liked it. In fact, upon seeing the LEGO commercial, his own interest had been piqued, and his long-held ambition and dream of becoming an architect were rekindled. Because of this, he readily agreed to his son's request to buy a LEGO set, despite his wife's disagreement. He did, however, make a show of appearing reluctant to appease his wife and convey that his agreement was primarily due to their child's insistence. Once the LEGO box unit had been wrapped in Kishin packaging, Akitora gratefully accepted it from the cashier. Exiting the store, Akitora encountered surprise when he ran into his Tora store workmates, who were also headed to the Kishin merchandise store. "Tsuruhama-san." His workmates looked at Akitora in astonishment. Akitora, still holding the Kishin package, turned to his workmates, who were in their Tora store uniforms, and exclaimed in surprise, "You guys! What are you two doing here?" The two workmates chuckled as they asked the same, "You two! What are you doing here?" Just as Akitora was about to respond, they noticed him carrying the Kishin package and exclaimed, "So, you bought an item from our competitors?" Akitora simply smiled and replied, "Well, if you two are here, you must also be considering purchases from our competitors." The two workmates nodded and explained their similar reasons for being at the Kishin store. After some light conversation, Akitora bid farewell to them and continued on his way. Returning home, he found that his son was eagerly awaiting his arrival. "Papa!" his son exclaimed, his eyes filled with excitement as he gazed at the Kishin package. "Look what we have!" Akitora proudly displayed the wrapped Lego box unit. His son jumped with joy as he took the package from his father's hands. Akitora chuckled and led his son into the living room. In the living room, Akitora's wife, engrossed in watching TV and munching on a snack, turned her attention to the father and son. "You really spent money on that?" His wife pouted, her brows furrowed in disapproval. "Come on, it's for our child," Akitora replied, attempting to appease his wife. Meanwhile, his son, seemingly uninterested in their little drama, eagerly opened the Kishin package wrap and exclaimed with excitement upon seeing the Lego box featuring the Legend of Zelda design. "I finally have something to show off to my friends." Akitora's son enthused, unaware that the Lego toy was not exclusively his. Akitora discreetly listened in and heard his son's desire to showcase their Lego set to his friends. Chapter 66, Shiryu. Toshima Ward, Higashi Ikebukuro, Sunshine City Prince Mansion. Shin had purchased an entire 41st floor suite in this upscale hotel, and his room also occupied the 41st floor. From this lofty vantage point, he could truly admire the city. Currently, he lay on his spacious bed, entwined with Myra, both of them unclothed. Myra embraced Shin with a sense of peace and contentment, cherishing the memory of the day. Previously, Kicho Arashiyama Honton, Kyoto. Kinkakuji room. When Myra realized that Shin had proposed to her in such an unexpected manner, she was overwhelmed with happiness, tears streaming down her face. She threw herself into Shin's arms. In each other's embrace, Shin whispered the question in her ear, "Will you marry me?" Myra nodded eagerly and, with tears of joy, said, "Yes." Upon hearing this, both Shin and Myra shared a deep kiss. Unperturbed by the female sommelier who had entered the room to serve sake, they remained deeply engrossed in each other, oblivious to her presence. The woman blushed in response and discreetly set down the sake before gently closing the sliding door. In the heat of the moment, Shin felt a strong desire to continue their intimate moments in the room. He didn't mind, as it was a private room, but Myra stopped him. She felt shy about engaging in such activities in public. Even though their room was private, it was still a restaurant's private room. In the present. "I'm so happy," Myra murmured as she nestled in Shin's embrace. "Me too," Shin smiled as he caressed her breasts. "Hey, hee, that tickles." Myra suppressed her laughter while gently restraining Shin's playful hands. Shin's smile turned mischievous and he continued to massage her chest further. "Hey, ha ha ha." Myra could no longer hold back her laughter and laughed. Because of this, Myra chose to take revenge and tickled Shin in return. "Ha ha ha." Shin laughed, then used more power with his hand, causing Myra to cry out in surprise. Myra pouted as she used more force with her hands while tickling Shin's ticklish spots. This made Shin laugh, but Shin responded by grabbing half of her breast and then squeezing it, making Myra moan from pleasure instead of making her laugh. But that's what Shin wants, and pleasing her was the goal. It is for this reason that the game of tickling, initially fun, became a game of pleasure. Their initially contented bodies become hot again as they intensely make love to each other's hot bodies. Ah! Nghh. Oh! Yes! Myra's moans were heard throughout the room. Ugh! As Shin's moan was more suppressed. Shibuya, Tokyo. Shibuya Crossing. Amid the bustling Shibuya Crossing, a bearded man with stubble sat on the sidelines, a guitar slung across his back. His weary face and expressions portrayed exhaustion, and he took a moment to relish a sip of water from a bottle. In this bustling scene, individuals clad in both formal suits and casual attire hurriedly passed by, paying little heed to the unconventional man. Such characters were typically overlooked, as the people around only focused on their own affairs. There were even some men, still adorned in their formal suits, sleeping on the sidewalk. The man with the guitar positioned himself close to the throngs navigating the busy crossing and decided to introduce himself. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shiryu Suzuki, and I'd like to share one of my original songs. Please, let me know your thoughts." However, his introduction received only brief glances from the Shibuya crowd before they continued on their way without a second thought. Undeterred, Shiryu cleared his throat, adjusted his voice, and began strumming his guitar. He sang, "Up and down, oh, up and down, life's twists and turns can turn a smile into a frown." Shiryu's voice, both pleasant and profound, resonated through the air, piquing the curiosity of a few onlookers. With each verse, he infused his performance with a mix of sadness and hope. "The path ahead is filled with mystery, oh, it's unclear, what will it be?" he sang, his deep voice evoking grief and questioning. Before long, he shifted to a more uplifting tone. "But within you lies the key," Shiryu continued to strum his guitar, pouring his heart into the song. "It's in your hands, just believe in your passion, that priceless treasure you hold, you'll ascend to the skies with dreams unfold." As he sang, Shiryu changed the guitar's tone, and with conviction, he declared, "No one can deter you, no one can sway, let's journey through uncertainty, come what may." Some passers-by couldn't help but halt in their tracks, their expressions a mix of emotions as they gazed at Shiryu. They had become so consumed by their work that they had lost sight of their true selves. They numbed their minds with trendy video games and dulled their senses with watching sports, all while remaining dedicated and hard-working, often putting in overtime. Shiryu's words struck a deep chord within their fragile yet resolute, icy hearts. As people started to take notice, Shiryu flashed a warm smile, a solitary tear escaping from his right eye. This time, however, he sang with a touch of cheerfulness, declaring, "Up and down, oh, up and down, life's a wild ride, a merry-go-round. The path ahead may be veiled in mystery, but within yourself, find the key, you'll see." As Shiryu continued singing, the once attentive crowd slowly began to fade into the background. Shiryu sang with tears of joy, encouraging, "Discover your passion, it's priceless and true, with dreams in hand you'll rise and break through. No one can hinder, no one can sway." While Shiryu continued to sing, a man who had been sleeping on the ground sat up to listen, a sad smile gracing his face. Unbeknownst to Shiryu, he had touched the hearts of some, especially the man who had initially been asleep, leaving them with smiles and tears in their eyes. After Shiryu's song concluded, some in the crowd began to clap. "You're very good. Well done." Generous individuals even contributed money to the donation box Shiryu had set up. "Thank you, everyone," Shiryu said with a smile after wiping away his tears. He continued, "The name of the song is Up and Down. It's a composition of mine," he added, noticing that some people had enjoyed it. However, not everyone in the crowd appreciated Shiryu's singing an original song. Some voiced their disdain, saying, "Dreams? Does this guy think he's living in a fantasy world? Absurd. A lazy bastard," remarked some among the crowd, hurling hurtful words. Shiryu bowed his head slightly, recalling his parents' disapproval. "You'll never make it," echoed the voice of Shiro Suzuki, his father, in his mind. "I will, father," Shiryu murmured determinedly. In his eyes, the disapproving crowd had embodies into the disapproving father, but he remained resolute in his pursuit of his dreams. Don't look for the song, I write it up after all. Chapter 67, Tora's Zelda's clone flopped. Toshima Ward, Ikebukuro. Kishin HQ. It had been approximately a week since the Kishin Famicom had achieved 1 million in sales. CEO's office. Li Han was currently engaged in a discussion with Shin. Yes, sir. It appears that the Suzuki Group is gearing up to launch a new product. They're planning to hold a press conference in about a week, Li Han reported gravely. He felt it necessary to share this information with Shin, particularly because he recalled the Suzuki Group chairman's son persistently pestering him about Kishin's shares and trying to convince Shin to take the company public. Yes, it has certainly created quite a buzz in the business world, Shin remarked with a smile as he sipped his coffee. Then, shaking his head, he added, but that isn't our concern. Li Han nodded, though he couldn't shake off a lingering unease regarding the Suzuki Group's sudden press conference. It was fueled by a dream he had, one where the Suzuki Group launched a product similar to Tora, the 16-bit console, which was not yet accessible within their company. The Zapper light gun is on the verge of completion, correct? Shin inquired, his attention shifting back to the computer screen before him. Yes, it should be ready for mass release in about a week, Li Han confirmed, gradually setting aside his concerns about the Suzuki Group's press conference. The Odyssey of Nurin Rage was the latest video game released by Tora VG Productions. Its advertisement had appeared on various popular and major broadcasting channels in Tokyo, including Nippon TV, TBS, and NHK, capturing the attention of many. The advertisement consisted of a 3-minute animation, featuring the main character, Nurin Rage, a young man clad in humble robes residing in the Hira Empire. The world was embroiled in chaos and warfare, and Nurin Rage, an impoverished youth, was chosen to serve as a soldier for his empire. Bloodshed and cruelty ravaged the land, and all of it unfolded before the innocent eyes of Nurin Rage in its gruesome detail. Over time, the young man underwent a profound transformation. His demeanor grew cold, and he fought relentlessly to survive the brutality of the battlefield. After several years of relentless conflict, the wars finally subsided when the two empires decided to cease hostilities and reach a truce. As the world transitioned into an era of peace, many people wept tears of joy, and laughter echoed through the taverns during celebratory gatherings. However, this newfound joy did not touch Nurin Rage. He had already been scarred by the horrors of war, and although his outward resilience seemed unyielding, beneath it lay the innocence of the young Nurin Rage, ensnared and forcibly thrust into the ravages of war. Even though the world had found peace, Nurin Rage was afflicted by insomnia. His instincts and body remained in a perpetual state of alert, as if a threat still lurked, despite the cessation of war. Nurin Rage believed he would exist in solitary vigilance and perpetual fear, his body seemingly craving the atmosphere of war while simultaneously recoiling from it. However, everything changed when he received a summons to the palace, where he was entrusted with a mission, to rescue the kidnapped princess, taken by the prince of the former enemy empire, the Aegis Empire, with whom the Hira Empire had recently made peace. Since the Aegis Empire disavowed any involvement with the kidnapping, absolving themselves of responsibility due to their prince's rebellion, the blame did not fall on the Aegis Empire. The two empires were wary that this incident could reignite hostilities, potentially leading to another war. Consequently, they jointly decided to entrust the covert rescue of the princess to a special operative. The Hira Empire selected none other than their finest soldier, Nurin Rage, for this critical mission. With the framework of the plot in place, Nurin Rage embarked on his quest to locate and rescue the kidnapped princess, who remained hidden by the villainous prince. The video game's storyline sparked animated discussions throughout Tokyo. Rescue a princess? Doesn't that sound familiar? Another observer chimed in, looks like they're borrowing a page from Kishin's video games again, ha ha ha. However, the technical guys who had favored Tora over Famicom due to its advanced system staunchly defended the Tora video game. It's not solely about monsters like in The Legend of Zelda. It delves into empires, wars, and conspiracy. Yet, it revolves around medieval-era wars and conspiracy. As debates raged on across various forums, the Japanese government held a different perspective. The Chief Cabinet Secretary of Japan found the content of the Tora video game to be sensitive, particularly because it evoked memories of a painful past for some individuals. Chief Cabinet Secretary Kuwaharajiro had his sights set on Tora Corporation. While they might be a prominent corporation, that didn't grant them immunity from damaging the country's image. However, Tora Corporation remained unaware of the fact that government officials were closely monitoring their activities. At Tora department store, a throng of excited customers had already formed a line to purchase the Odyssey of Nurin Rage. Leading the queue was a young man named Q, who eagerly secured a copy. After acquiring the game, Q rushed back home and, upon entering his room, swiftly powered on his television and activated the Tora 16 VG entertainment system. With both the TV and Tora console humming to life, he inserted the video game cartridge into the slot. The Tora logo appeared on the screen, and following that, the title Odyssey of Nurin Rage. They even mimicked the intro style of The Legend of Zelda. Just with a different design, Q couldn't help but note a wry smile forming at the corner of his mouth. He pressed the controller button to initiate the game, and before diving in, it prompted him to enter his name. Without hesitation, Q input his own name, and the game finally commenced. An introductory message appeared: "The Odyssey of Nurin Rage, our valiant warrior, Nurin Rage, has been assigned the formidable task of rescuing Princess Aanyala from the clutches of the malevolent Aegis Prince Rejet. This mission was shrouded in secrecy to prevent further turmoil in both empires. Your mission: save Princess Aanyala and avert the world from plunging into war once more." Following that, various in-game items and information were listed. Q owned a Famicom and had played The Legend of Zelda, so he recognized that even the introduction style was identical, only the text content differed. As the game commenced, his in-game character sported green attire and a brown hat. The gameplay style mirrored that of The Legend of Zelda, and similar to that game, the character was initially unarmed. Just as Q began to search for the sword's location, a message appeared: "The Emperor wishes to meet you." Q maneuvered his character into the palace, where he beheld the Emperor seated upon the throne. "Welcome, brave warrior. You are our last hope to rescue my daughter, the princess. This mission carries great peril, take this sword." A sword materialized for Q's in-game character. Afterward, Q steered his character outside the palace, but as his character emerged, here soldiers swiftly surrounded him. "You shan't rescue the princess. Prince Rejet shall reign supreme." A skirmish ensued, with Q's character retaliating. Progressing further, Q encountered various foes, including mages and sorcerers along the way. Although the game boasted slightly enhanced graphics compared to The Legend of Zelda, Q couldn't shake off his growing sense of boredom. There were no secret caves or hidden locations akin to The Legend of Zelda. The gameplay adhered closely to its narrative, with little room for exploration beyond battling mobs and adversaries. As a result, Q grew disinterested and powered down the Tora 16-bit console, disconnecting it from the TV. He then retrieved his Kishin Famicom and inserted The Legend of Zelda. In contrast, The Legend of Zelda offered vastly superior and more engaging gameplay. Q quickly realized that by placing bombs at specific spots, he could uncover uncharted caves and hidden underground realms. Unlike the hurried and somewhat grim narrative of The Odyssey of Nurin Rage, The Legend of Zelda offered a more immersive and satisfying gaming experience. Chapter 68, Revised Law. Tora Headquarters. It had been a few hours since the release of their new game, and the programmers were eagerly awaiting their raise. They were somewhat confident that their game would succeed, thanks to its realistic yet dark storyline, which set it apart from the usual fantasy and childish narratives. All they could do was wait for the sales results, and when those arrived, they were not disappointed. In just a single day, they were summoned to a department meeting where they learned that the video game had surpassed the daily sales of their other, less polished games, except for Happy. The sales for their video game had reached at least 15,000 units on that day. Although it fell short of the estimated sales for The Legend of Zelda, which averaged between 20 to 30,000 daily sales. The game development team at Tora celebrated at the karaoke, and the higher UPS allowed them this moment of joy. The developers became complacent and enjoyed their day, but when the sales report for their new video game arrived on the second day, they were about to meet with the displeased faces of the higher UPS, especially President Taro Ikeda. The game developers were summoned to a company meeting, and they entered the meeting room with anticipation, hoping to see the sales of their video game grow once more. However, reality turned out to be the opposite of their expectations. Upon entering the room, they could immediately sense the somber atmosphere prevailing within. Nervousness gripped the game developers as they spotted the familiar, stern countenance of the company's president, Taro Ikeda. "All of you are here," Taro said with a serious and solemn tone. The game developers responded with formal and anxious bows. "Since you're all here, I must inform you that our new video game, Odyssey of Nurin Rage, has experienced a significant decline in sales," stated one of the executives solemnly. The game developers lowered their heads slightly. Though they had braced themselves for bad news, the phrase "significant decline" hit them harder than expected, casting a negative surprise over the room. While they had initially anticipated an outburst from President Taro Ikeda, he remained remarkably silent, leaving the game developers to grapple with their uneasy feelings, interpreting his silence as one of disappointment. Indeed, the game developers were correct in their assessment. Taro Ikeda was disappointed, but what lay ahead for them was worse than they had imagined. The sales of Odyssey of Nurin Rage, which initially sold 15,000 copies on the first day, declined to 7,000 sales on the second day, Taro Ikeda said in a calm tone. This revelation surprised the game developers, particularly given the tranquil demeanor of the usually stern company president, Taro Ikeda. Based on their past experiences, they had expected him to be furious, venting his anger at their underperformance compared to Kishin's game developers and programmers. Suddenly, the adage "the calm before the storm" sprang to mind, and a premonition of impending trouble sent shivers down their spines. Their instincts and apprehensions were soon confirmed as Taro Ikeda continued speaking, this time with a serious and solemn tone. "I don't really care that much about the decline in sales, we're still making a profit, even if it's just a small one. Profit is profit." The creative director, Goda Mitsuai, began to speak, then but Taro Ikeda interrupted him, saying, "I'm not finished yet." Goda Mitsuai nodded and fell silent. Taro Ikeda ensured that everyone was attentive and then pressed on, "Who is the narrative designer of Odyssey of Nurin Rage?" The game developers turned their attention toward a young man in a formal suit. He promptly raised his hand and stated, "That would be me, sir. I'm the narrative designer for Odyssey of Nurin Rage." Taro Ikeda nodded and asked solemnly, "What's your name?" Nervously, the young man replied, "I'm Kinoshita Yoshi, sir," his hands fidgeting uneasily. Taro Ikeda nodded and fell silent for a moment, and the room remained hushed as everyone awaited his next words. "Do you have any idea of the trouble you've caused our company?" Taro Ikeda asked in a cold tone. What do you mean, sir?" Kinoshita Yoshi inquired nervously, and his colleagues shared his anxiety. Taro Ikeda let out a chuckle and remarked, "Hee, I forgot. You're not aware of the reason yet." His grim laughter sent chills not only through the game development team but also among the other executives. Taro Ikeda laughed silently for a moment before continuing, "Let me pose a question to you. Do you know the history of our country?" he asked Kinoshita Yoshi calmly. Which part of history, sir?" Yoshi asked with a trembling voice. 1941, Taro Ikeda replied without hesitation. I can explain, Yoshi said, sounding confused and nervous. Taro Ikeda simply nodded. That's when our country began, Yoshi started, then abruptly stopped as if realizing something. It seems you've just realized it, Taro Ikeda said, chuckling once more. The entire room was thrown into a deeper state of solemnity when Taro Ikeda suddenly revealed something that took everyone by surprise, saying, "Government officials warned us about our new video game, Odyssey of Neuron Rage. They hoped we would immediately cease its production." The game developers, particularly Kinoshita Yoshi, were left in shock. The executives, who had been kept in the dark about this development, were equally stunned. "What does this mean?" one of them inquired. The meeting room erupted into a cacophony of discussions. Another executive voiced their disagreement, saying, "They can't do this. Odyssey of Neuron Rage doesn't violate any laws." "That's correct. It's unjust." Taro Ikeda sighed and shook his head in response to the executive's opinions. "That's why our video game is still on the shelves. However, higher government officials insist that we take it down, citing concerns about its content being harmful to children and potentially detrimental to the country's image. It's the government we're dealing with, and our board of directors has also decided to comply. I'm just here to remind you." But another executive argued, "Video games aren't covered by the Juvenile Protection Act, so there's no legal basis for this." Taro Ikeda shook his head again. "No, it's futile even if it's not explicitly covered now. After our video game, the government decided to update the Juvenile Protection Act and other laws to restrict video games and related products, so Odyssey of Neuron Rage will still be banned." The executives slumped in their chairs, disheartened. "But we'll suffer significant losses." Taro Ikeda offered a helpless shrug. "There's no way around it." The narrative designer, Kinoshita Yoshi, knelt on the floor, bowing his head to his superiors. "Please forgive me. It's all my fault." Taro Ikeda and the other executives exchanged looks, shaking their heads with a sense of helplessness. The damage and losses had already been incurred. Blaming individuals would only lead to frustration. In various parts of Tokyo and throughout the Kanto region, young people engaged in heated debates over who was superior between The Legend of Zelda and Odyssey of Neuron Rage. However, there was hardly any competition, as Odyssey of Neuron Rage had only a handful of fans, and most regarded them as peculiar Tora enthusiasts. Then, a bombshell news report emerged. Numerous major broadcasting channels in Japan announced that Tora VG Productions' latest game, Odyssey of Neuron Rage, would cease production and no longer be available for purchase. Another critical report held immense significance for the future of the video game industry in Japan. This news was of utmost importance to pioneering companies such as Kishin and Tora. The Japanese government had revised the Juvenile Protection Act and other laws to restrict video games, placing limits on content to safeguard minors and prevent video games from tarnishing the government's or the country's reputation, both domestically and internationally. The Juvenile Protection Act and several other laws had actually been in the pipeline for a few months in relation to video games. This was primarily due to the absence of existing legislation to regulate the burgeoning video game industry. Specifically, the provisions aimed at preventing damage to the government or the country were added as a direct response to the controversial Tora video game. The release of Odyssey of Neuron Rage served as a catalyst for the swift approval of these laws by both the National Diet of Japan and the Emperor, primarily because they were seen as crucial in safeguarding the country's image. Chapter 69, Considerations on USA and Europe Market. Kishin Headquarters. I never expected that in the early stages of the video game industry recovery, it would already be subject to government regulations, Lee Han lamented, sighing. Shin chuckled at his lament and remarked, "Hee, I'm actually surprised that there have been no laws restricting video games until now. Not only the Juvenile Protection Act, but many regulations in the laws have been in the process of restricting video games." Myra nodded and laughed, This is what Tora reaps for being so dark and not limiting profanities in Odyssey of Nurin Rage. Li Han agreed with Myra's words, but Shin shook his head, saying, "It's not really about that." Li Han and Myra looked at Shin in confusion as he continued, "Even if it's such a dark game, it can still be sold if it's labeled as rated C. They can still sell it," Shin said with a smile. Myra grew puzzled and inquired, "Then why didn't Tora go for that option?" Shin responded with a smile, "You know, the reason it was banned was probably due to Empire and wars. The fact that the Empire in that video game forced the main character, Nurin Rage, to become a soldier might have stirred up memories from several decades ago." Myra's perplexed expression transformed into realization as she said, "Was it because of?" She paused and was about to follow it with a word, but Li Han beat her to it. "It's because of the sensitive topic of World War II, Li Han interjected solemnly. Shin nodded at them, but then he noticed Li Han's solemn expression and was about to inquire why when he realized that Li Han was South Korean. Shin simply nodded and replied, "That's correct. The government likely pressured Tora to comply." Myra nodded in agreement, saying, "I didn't expect it was because of that. I thought it was because of its dark content." Shin shook his head and explained, "It took months for the government to take action and impose regulations on video games, so they probably saw the potential profits and benefits that the video game industry could bring. They didn't want to place too many restrictions on it." Myra nodded in understanding and added, "I see. They probably had to revise the laws due to the sensitive content of Tora's Odyssey of Nurin Rage." Shin nodded in agreement, and Li Han, who had been feeling melancholic, finally asked, "Speaking of the potential of video games, sir, do you have plans to expand our products to different countries such as the USA and Europe?" Li Han had not yet experienced working on a global scale and was unfamiliar with this topic. Myra also looked at Shin with anticipation, sharing her excitement about the prospect of Kishin becoming a global company known worldwide. With a smile, Shin nodded in response to Li Han's question and said, "Of course, I am planning to expand." Myra and Li Han grew excited as Shin continued, "However, there are numerous factors to consider when entering foreign markets." Myra and Li Han nodded in agreement, although they didn't fully grasp the complexities involved. Drawing from his experience at a large game company in his previous role, Shin elaborated, "Considering that we don't yet have a distribution network in foreign countries like the USA and Europe, and we haven't even established one in East Asia or Southeast Asia, not to mention the need to develop a US and Europe version of the Famicom game console." Myra began to gain a better understanding, and Li Han, who had previously worked for local or small businesses before joining Kishin, also followed along. Shin reassured them, saying, "Furthermore, we need to be well prepared. Even if we establish distribution networks, especially in the USA and Europe, we must ensure that we can meet the demands of these countries for our console." He chuckled and added, "After all, if we fail to meet demand and our console goes out of stock, it would be considered a loss for the company." Myra and Li Han nodded in agreement as Shin finally stated, "Not to mention that we have a strong presence here in our country. It's only right that we focus on our home market first before considering expansion." "Agreed," Myra nodded with a smile. Tora HQ Board of Directors. "It's really hurting our company's assets because of that video game flop. Has the person responsible been fired yet?" one of the directors in the Board of Directors inquired. President Taro Ctto was present at the Board of Directors meeting and nodded, "Yes, the narrative designer has been dismissed from our company." "That's good," another director from the Board of Directors sighed in relief. Chairman Asahi, seated at the head, said with seriousness, "There's no need to dwell on that video game. It's only a minor setback." The Board of Directors reluctantly nodded. They still held a certain level of fear for the chairman, given what happened to the vice chairman in the past. Seeing everyone in agreement, Chairman Asahi nodded and said with a smile, "Since we've been receiving bad news recently, I have some good news to deliver right now." "Good news?" The board of directors exchanged glances and looked at Chairman Asahi with anticipation. Chairman Asahi nodded with a smile and continued, "We have conducted market tests for video games and video game consoles in our country's market. Considering that we didn't have much presence here in Japan, I believe it's time for us to explore the US market to expand our presence there." He spoke with a cunning smile. The board of directors were surprised and elated, saying, "That's great. If we can't compete with Kishin in our home market, we'll get ahead of them and surpass them in other countries. I've been considering this for a while." Finally, some good news. The board of directors engaged in joyful discussions. Chairman Asahi smiled and announced, "We've already developed the console version for the USA, so all we need to do is engage in discussions with our distribution network partners, retailers, and catalog retailers in the US." The board of directors erupted in applause, clearly thrilled about the prospect of selling their video game console in the US market, a veritable goldmine waiting to be tapped. They understood the immense profits that video games and video game consoles could yield. Even in Japan alone, Tora had managed to turn a profit, albeit a modest one when compared to their other products. This was precisely why they aimed to prioritize video games over their electronic and other offerings. "Wait for us, goldmine. The prospectors are on their way," the directors thought with excitement. Chairman Asahi emphasized, "Preparations to ensure we have enough supplies to meet the demand should be handled with care." The board of directors nodded in agreement. Chapter 70, Nintendo? Kishin Headquarters. Shin observed the game developers at Kishin Trademark presenting their suggestions for future games to him. This group of people was guided by him, so they were well versed in the basics. Many of them proposed rough ideas, and some were not entirely novel. However, they would undoubtedly improve in the future. For now, they had developed the new game they were about to release, Contra. Shin planned to release this game soon, especially since they were considering entering the US market in the future. Contra would undoubtedly be a suitable game for the US market, given its focus on gunfights. After discussing with the game developers, he left to return to his office. He still needed to rearrange his strategic plan in his document, considering the establishment of distribution network connections, at least in East Asia. He was well aware that as he planned to enter other countries' markets, Tora, the international global-scale company, was likely contemplating expanding its video games and video game consoles into other countries' markets as well. And Shin knows that if Tora wanted to, they could do so immediately. However, Shin isn't overly concerned. In fact, he eagerly anticipates Tora's entry into the unfamiliar market before Kishin. He plans to let Tora develop and allow foreign markets to discover the appeal of Tora's well-executed but mostly mediocre video games. When Kishin eventually enters the foreign market with unique and high-quality games, people will inevitably compare them. After all, it's human nature to make comparisons, and through this comparison, Kishin will benefit. But this is all just an idea. If Shin and his company don't handle it well, then it's his loss. As he was inputting plans into his strategic document in his office, someone knocked on the door. "Enter," Shin said, as the door swung open. It was Lee Han who quickly spoke as he entered, "Mr. Suzuki, there's someone outside the building who wishes to meet you." Shin furrowed his brows and inquired, "Who is it?" Lee Han shook his head and replied, "I don't know, but he claims to know you, and he's accompanied by a woman." Observing Shin's frown, Lee Han added, "The man left a message he wanted me to convey to you." Shin asked with confusion, "What did he say?" Lee Han answered, "He mentioned these words, Toyota Starlet and favor." Shin's eyes widened as he recalled the day he was on the verge of scamming a couple near the Toyota dealership for funds for his company. "Invite him in," Shin said with a smile, to which Lee Han nodded. Outside the Kishin headquarters, Takuza and Erika gazed up at the towering building. Takuza, with a complex expression, remarked, "I'm not certain if it's truly the same brat we encountered that day or just someone who resembles him, but we need to verify it," he told Erica, who stood beside him. Erica nodded in agreement and added, "You're right. It's hard to believe that the young and naive kid who attempted to scam us is now wealthy with businesses that could pose a threat to our toy company." Takuza agreed, and let's not forget, according to Uncle Asahi's information, this young man is supposedly the son of the Suzuki Group chairman. As they conversed, Li Han returned to them. Just when they thought the young CEO of Kishin had declined, Li Han surprised them by saying, "Please, follow me." He gestured for them to enter the building. Takuza and Erica exchanged surprised glances, nodded to Li Han, and followed him into the building. Upon entering, Takuza and Erica couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised by the well-maintained surroundings. On the first floor, employees sat in the building's cafe, engaged in cheerful conversations. There was even a modest restaurant on the first floor, with many employees dining while working on their papers and documents. In addition, they spotted an arcade section with transparent walls, allowing them to see people playing games, as well as some transparent glass-walled karaoke rooms. "The workspace for the employees here seems quite impressive," Takuza remarked with a chuckle, interjecting his thoughts to Li Han. Erica nodded in agreement with a smile. Li Han smiled in response and explained, "We ensure that our employees maintain good mental health. We provide them the freedom to play, relax in the cafe, dine in the restaurant, and even sing karaoke during their free hours. This approach contributes to their overall well-being and boosts productivity." Takuza found this perspective to be quite unique. Not many companies adopted such a mindset. Little did he know that these words originated from Shin and had been passed down to Li Han. Shin had adapted this idea from his previous life, where he had seen how super-rich individuals treated their employees by offering them excellent workspaces and an enviable lifestyle, to the extent that some chose to live at the company headquarters. Li Han led them into an elevator and pressed the button for the 30th floor. As the elevator ascended, they reached their destination on the 30th floor. They exited the elevator and followed Li Han through the corridor. After a short walk, Li Han came to a stop in front of a door with a sign that read Chief Executive Officer. Li Han nodded to Takuza and Erica, who were starting to feel a bit nervous. They weren't entirely sure if this was the same young man they had encountered before. Additionally, they had no idea if the young man's success had inflated his ego, and they were concerned about potentially embarrassing themselves in front of him. Li Han opened the door and ushered them into the office. As Takuza and Erica entered, they expected to see the young man but found the office apparently empty. The office was spacious, with large sofas and a wooden office desk. High-quality, comfortable chairs were placed around the desk, and a bulky computer sat atop it. Shelves against the wall behind the desk were filled with neatly lined-up books and action figures of Super Mario, Link, Zelda, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, and more, along with various artworks. Potted plants adorned the windowsills, providing a refreshing touch. The room was illuminated just right, creating a neat and inviting atmosphere. While they admired the aesthetics of the room, Li Han guided them to sit on the sofa and then quietly left the room. In front of the sofa, there was a table with a nude Greek figurine at its center, adding to the ambience. As Takuza and Erica continued to survey the room, they realized it was larger than they initially thought. An open door at the far end of one wall led to another room. They began to wonder if the young CEO was really present when the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the open door of the adjacent room. They turned their attention toward the source of the footsteps and saw a young man carrying a tray of coffee approaching them. Takuza and Erica examined the young man closely and soon confirmed that he was indeed the same individual they had encountered before, though now he appeared healthier. The young man placed the coffee tray on the table before Takuza and Erica. They waited in silence as he arranged their coffee, and when he finally took a seat, Takuza smiled and remarked, "I didn't expect a young man who was struggling to secure startup funds to achieve such remarkable success in just a few months." He took a sip of his coffee, concealing his relative unfamiliarity with Shin since they had only met once. They hadn't anticipated that Shin would become so successful. Erika, sharing Takuza's sentiments, offered a faint smile. Shin, however, adopted a friendly tone, responding with a joking remark, "Yet, I never thought I'd have my debtors visiting me so soon." Takuza, in the midst of sipping his coffee, nearly choked as he chuckled, "He, that's one way to put it." Erika also let out a small laugh. The atmosphere lightened, and Shin, Takuza, and Erika engaged in light conversation. Takuza and Erika introduced themselves to Shin, who reciprocated in kind. As Takuza asked, "But seriously, how did you manage it? Is it true that you turned 420,000 yen into a company estimated to be worth hundreds of millions?" Takuza wasn't aware of Kishin's true net worth since it was a private company. Erika wore a mystified expression as she awaited Shin's response. Shin nodded and affirmed, "That's correct. Without your assistance, I wouldn't have been able to start my company." Takuza couldn't help but feel skeptical as he questioned, "Really? According to our information, you're the son of the Suzuki Group chairman." Shin was mildly surprised that Takuza knew about his background, but he nodded with a hint of amusement, "That's true, but I didn't rely on my parents," he chuckled. Takuza and Erika exchanged glances, their skepticism apparent. Shin maintained a confident smile in response to Takuza's evident skepticism. However, Takuza abruptly revealed, "In fact, I have a few reasons for being here." Shin regarded Takuza attentively, fully prepared to reciprocate the favor Takuza had extended to him in the past. Then Takuza finally said, stating, "I actually hold the position of Ku at Nintendo Koppai. Our company specializes in developing toys and cards." Before Takuza could complete his sentence, Shin couldn't contain his astonishment and blurted out, "What did you just say?" Had he misheard it? Did he actually hear the word Nintendo? Chapter 71, Suzuki Press Conference. Kishin Headquarters. Takuza gazed at Shin, his expression filled with confusion. He didn't hear. He wondered aloud. Observing the furrowed brows on Shin's face, Takuza repeated, "My company specializes in toys and cards." Shin shook his head, prompting him to ask, "No, before that?" Sharing a meaningful glance with Erika, Takuza responded, "I'm the Ku of Nintendo Koppai." Shin looked at them, a hint of surprise crossing his face as he thought, "Nintendo? Perhaps they're the Nintendo of this world." Takuza met Shin's gaze and quipped, "What? Are you so taken aback that I hold a high position in a company?" Shin shook his head and quickly added, "Haha, of course not." Takuza chuckled lightly before remarking, "You little brat, that's rather insulting." Shin merely chuckled in response as he sipped his coffee. Takuza continued, "As you know, my company has been thriving in the manufacturing of toys and cards, but lately, your subsidiary company has been causing us quite a bit of trouble." He said this with a sly smile. Shin returned the smile and commented, "So, you're referring to Kishin Merchandise, right?" Takuza nodded and remarked, "You're already reaping substantial profits from video games alone. However, your acquisition of a struggling toy company, which was once our competitor and is now Kishin Merchandise, has led to a decline in our sales." Takuza's tone remained composed as he conveyed this. In truth, Shin hadn't paid much attention to the toy and card companies. The reason behind establishing Kishin Merchandise through the acquisition of a struggling toy company was his awareness of the immense profitability of his company's intellectual properties, such as Mario, Zelda, Donkey Kong, and their upcoming product, Pokémon. What he hadn't anticipated was the existence of a parallel world's Nintendo in this realm. There were numerous toy companies throughout Japan, and when Shin decided to acquire one, he didn't delve deeply into the details. He simply sold their toys, action figures, and video game cartridges through toy store channels. This dual strategy, capitalizing on popular video game character merchandise and acquiring toy store distribution, proved to be highly lucrative for the company. "So, are you suggesting that I should halt Kishin Merchandise?" Shin inquired with a chuckle. Takuza quickly shook his head, his smile intact. Of course not, he replied, then added, I simply have a favor to ask of you. Shin smiled and responded, certainly, go ahead. This was precisely what Shin had been anticipating. He had pledged to repay their favor from earlier, after all. Takuza and Erika exchanged glances before Takuza spoke up, saying, I wish to propose a collaboration with your Kishin merchandise. Shin was somewhat taken aback by this unexpected request. He had anticipated that Takuza might seek certain rights to his subsidiary, like popular video game characters such as Mario or Zelda, or perhaps even the highly sought-after Lego brand. You're suggesting a collaboration? Shin inquired, his gaze fixed seriously on Takuza. Takuza nodded, explaining, I'll be straightforward with you, our company is currently facing financial constraints. By collaborating with you, aside from mutual product promotion, we can pool our resources to reduce costs. He elaborated on the rationale behind his collaboration proposal. What are your thoughts? Takuza asked, sporting a hopeful smile. Shin simply smiled as he took a sip of his coffee. He then replied, I believe it's a good idea. All right, I'll authorize my subsidiary to collaborate with your company. He was extending this favor willingly, and what Takuza had proposed seemed quite reasonable to him. Expressing their gratitude, Takuza and Erika shook hands with Shin. Shin informed them that they could meet with Kishin merchandise at the adjacent small building near the Kishin headquarters. A few days later, at Keidanren Kaiken. A sizable crowd had already assembled at the building, including journalists, reporters, and numerous figures from the business world, all gathered for the press conference initiated by Suzuki Group's electronics company. At the forefront of the stage stood the president of Suzuki Group, Kiro Kurosawa. The CEOs of various Suzuki companies took turns presenting their new products and services, with the CEO of Suzuki Electronics showcasing their latest innovations. After introducing their new rice cooker, Walkman, and handheld video camera, the CEO of Suzuki Electronics approached the conclusion of his speech, unveiling their newest creation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Suzuki Entertainment System, 16-bit. The product, sleek and black in design, was positioned prominently, with Nico Tabata, the CEO of Suzuki Electronics, standing beside it. He proceeded to elaborate on how the SES 16-bit clearly outperformed the Tora 16-bit in terms of sound quality and performance. It's just another video game console. One person in the audience commented with a hint of disappointment, expecting something more groundbreaking from the Suzuki Group. However, just as assumptions began to form, the CEO of Suzuki Electronics interjected within his speech, "Our console is set apart from the others. Our console comes with two distinct controllers." A stage assistant brought an item to the stage, and Nico proceeded to unveil the two controllers, saying, "One of the controllers is a comfortable and standard gaming controller, while the second controller is." The projected image behind Nico switched to that of a computer keyboard. "That's right. Our second controller for the console is a functional computer keyboard," Nico explained with a smile. "But that's not all, our console isn't limited to gaming alone, it can also be used for educational purposes. We've included cartridges for learning, and with the keyboard, you'll have a computer experience right on our console," Nico continued. The projected video behind him showcased the details and demonstrated a child playing on the SES 16-bit, seamlessly transitioning to the child using the console for educational purposes, learning the alphabet and even English. Nico added, "It has been observed that the rise of new video games has led many young people to neglect their studies, focusing solely on gaming. This has had a detrimental effect on their learning and education, causing concern among parents." He paused, then smiled, and said, "But with our console, your child won't just have fun playing video games, they can also learn." The audience at the press conference, initially skeptical, now understood the distinctive feature of SES compared to Tora or Kishin. It offered something that parents had been longing for, a tool for their children's education. With these points, even if Suzuki video games might be inferior in gaming terms, they were ahead in terms of winning the hearts of parents by promoting learning alongside entertainment. Chapter 72, New Product. Keidanren Kaiken, the Japanese Federation Building. Taro Ikeda, president of Tora Corporation, attended the press conference hosted by the Suzuki Group. Initially, he awaited Suzuki's subpar product but was instead disappointed when he saw the Suzuki Entertainment System. They offer learning features and a keyboard controller. Why didn't we consider this earlier? Taro Ikeda pondered solemnly. Other Tora executives also stood by his side, examining Suzuki's products, with a particular focus on the Suzuki console. They all wore solemn expressions. They hadn't considered this idea before. How did this notion slip their minds, allowing Suzuki to be the ones to introduce it? Up at the front of the seats, Shiko and Seiki exchanged a smile. The one who initially proposed the concept of incorporating learning into the console was, in fact, their father. Shiro Suzuki, who had a deep-seated aversion to video games due to the hardships it had brought upon his father and the way it had negatively impacted his son's life, had suggested integrating educational features into the video game console. As a parent, he understood the significance of ensuring their children's education. With this idea, they were almost certain they had addressed the concerns of parents worried about their child's future. Kishin headquarters. On the company's television screens, employees watched the Suzuki press conference. When they observed that the SES 16-bit outperformed Tora in terms of performance and offered educational features, it raised significant concerns among them. When this news reached Shin's ears, he let out a wry chuckle. He had completely overlooked the fact that in his previous life, Nintendo had released the Famicom Basic, designed for educational purposes. It completely slipped his mind because he had been so focused on video games. But there was no other way around it. Suzuki Electronics had already implemented the idea before him in this world. Well, it's not like he can't adopt that idea. After all, he had already developed the Zapper light gun. The release of the video game Duck Hunt was about to happen. Let's see how it will fare in comparison to Suzuki and Tora, both of which were giants compared to Kishin. Shin smiled as he thought. Many parents in Tokyo had been eager to purchase the Suzuki Entertainment System 16-bit for their children, especially given its reasonable price compared to Tora and Kishin. The console itself cost 12,500 yen, but the keyboard controller was sold separately. This was perhaps a shrewd move by Suzuki, as the keyboard controller was priced at around 5,700 yen. Despite the high cost, since the keyboard controller was bundled with educational learning cartridges, many parents still chose to buy it. However, some financially well-off young individuals decided to purchase the Suzuki console to experience what the world of video games had to offer. Like young Kiji, who bought the Suzuki video game called Officer Dog. Once he returned home, Kiji connected the SES 16-bit to his television, powered it on, and saw the Suzuki logo appear on the screen. Then, the title Officer Dog flashed onto the screen. The theme music sound quality was undoubtedly superior to the other two consoles, Tora and Famicom. The game revolved around a pet dog whose owner was suddenly kidnapped. The gameplay resembled a blend of Super Mario Bros. And Happy. What in the world? Are these big companies copying the smaller company Kishin? Kiji was left somewhat speechless. The sales of the Suzuki Entertainment System, along with its keyboard controllers and educational learning cartridges, totaled approximately 17,000 units. The SES 16-bit sales began to slowly catch up to Tora, with 9,000 units sold. Tora Corporation was gradually losing ground in the Japanese market. This prompted the Tora Corporation's board of directors to expedite their contracts with distribution partners in the USA market. Their aim was to establish a swift presence, especially since the first arcade and video game company in the USA, known as Atari, had long since gone bankrupt. leaving them without competition. Furthermore, the USA market was undeniably larger and wealthier than the Japanese market, promising significant profits. The potential of the USA market far surpassed that of Japan. With this in mind, Tora Corporation swiftly forged partnerships with mass-market retailer Walmart and electronic retailer Tandy. In just about a month, their products would begin appearing in various locations across the USA. The board of directors was racing against time, driven by their vigilance against the impending release of Suzuki Group's products in the USA market. Tora's directors were determined to establish their presence in the USA before Suzuki had the chance. While Tora was engrossed in the new Suzuki video game console for its educational features over the past few days, Episode 5 of The Legend of Zelda played on. Loyal viewers watched with anticipation as Link battled Ganon's minions. Ha ha ha! You can't defeat me! Ganon's underlings taunted as they observed Link's struggles. It seems Lord Aquamentus won't have to contend with him. A robed man remarked. We'll handle him, sir, the minions assured. The man nodded and departed. Viewers watched with bated breath as they saw Link, surrounded by monstrous creatures, valiantly declare, "Ah! I'll save the princess!" and swung his sword, only to be pushed back. The monster pushed him forcefully and launched a fierce attack, leaving Link battered and thrown aside. Link's body collided with the wall, and he slid down. He gritted his teeth while gazing at the taunting monsters. Is this the end? Link thought, filled with despair. However, memories of his friends and family being wiped out by Ganon's forces surged within him. His eyes widened, and his determination ignited. Not yet. I still have to save the world. Link's eyes seemed to shine as his sword emitted a brilliant light. He rose to his feet, and while the monsters continued to mock him, Link unconsciously swung his sword toward the distant foes. The monsters regarded Link with disdain for attempting a long-distance attack, but their expressions shifted to shock when they saw the sword emitting light, followed by a swift slash that struck down one of the monsters instantly. As exhilarating music played, Link stood triumphantly amidst the defeated monsters. Loyal viewers, initially concerned for Link, found themselves caught up in the excitement, only for the scene to suddenly cut to a commercial break. Cuckoo and Kuro, who had been watching together, were eager to see how powerful Link would become. Their excitement waned momentarily when a Kishin advertisement appeared on the screen, featuring a young man holding a gun-shaped controller and shooting at the television. Cuckoo and Kuro exchanged puzzled glances when they saw the young man holding a gun-shaped controller. They wondered if it was some kind of toy. However, their confusion was quickly dispelled when they realized that the young man was playing a new video game released by Kishin called Duck Hunt. The gun-shaped device was actually a controller that allowed players to aim at the screen and shoot the ducks flying, and the dog holding a duck kept appearing behind the bushes. Their interest piqued, both Cuckoo and Kuro, as well as the loyal viewers of The Legend of Zelda, watched the advertisement with growing curiosity. Kuro turned to Cuckoo and said, "It looks like we'll need to pool our allowances again to buy this." Cuckoo hadn't initially been a fan of video games, as she was busy with traditional women's etiquette lessons taught by her mother, who was a traditional woman. However, after watching and enjoying The Legend of Zelda, she had purchased the video game alongside Kuro. She had contributed 30% of the cost, with Kuro covering the remaining 70%, given that he had more free time to play. Many loyal viewers of the show were also eager to get their hands on a Kishin game controller. Chapter 73, Gratitude. Many devoted fans of The Legend of Zelda had the opportunity to watch the Kishin advertisement. As a result, numerous dedicated viewers in Tokyo and the entire Kanto region, along with surrounding cities, began searching for a gun-shaped controller in the video game Duck Hunt in various stores and malls. Ian, a prominent mass-market retailer in Japan, not only outperformed Suzuki and Tora retail companies but also operated a wide range of stores and drugstores. Ian Retail started using electronic data interchange, EDI, to enhance communication with suppliers, which proved to be efficient and cost-effective, reducing expenses related to paper-based document processing like printing, postage, and data entry. With the surge in sales of their electronic suppliers, Kishin, they promptly reached out to Kishin for more supplies to meet the demand. However, they were unprepared for the overwhelming response as people lined up to purchase the Kishin Zapper light gun. Ian Retail's higher UPS had not anticipated such rapid popularity within a day. Consequently, they initiated communication with Kishin Company. Location: Chiba, Japan. Ian Retail Headquarters. Takeshita Okada, a middle-aged man and the CEO of Ian Retail, attentively observed the graphs displayed on the projected white wall alongside other executives. His particular interest lay in the private company, Kishin. It wasn't about acquiring it, rather, Okada aimed to strengthen the relationship with this promising company. Such a company was certainly worth establishing connections with. Furthermore, Takeshita Okada was aware that Kishin had not yet partnered with foreign distribution retailers. Takeshita saw an opportunity in this yet untapped and promising company. From a different perspective, a company with an estimated net worth in the billions of yen should attract foreign retail distributors, unless the owner of Kishin isn't currently interested in expanding the company internationally. Takeshita wanted to seize this opportunity and establish connections with Kishin to become one of its distribution networks abroad. Ian Retail already has a presence in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and South Korea. Takeshita and the other executives were keen on partnering with Kishin, which is why when Ian Retail and Kishin signed a new contract, they offered benefits and incentives favorable to Kishin to earn their favor. Ueda Michi had just purchased a Zapper light gun and the Duck Hunt video game from an Ian Retail store. Ueda Michi, a multi-millionaire, owned a small business and was a single parent. He had lost his wife shortly after she gave birth to their child. At the age of 28, Ueda Michi became a single parent, and now, at 35. Because of his busy schedule running his business, Michi found it challenging to spend time with his 7-year-old son. His son often occupied his days watching kids' channels on cable, particularly American cartoons. Michi had hired a maid to care for his son, who was typically reserved, occasionally laughing while watching cartoons but mostly appearing gloomy, likely due to the absence of a mother and seeing other children with one. Then, one day, his child suddenly insisted on buying something called the Kishin SKT Famicom. Feeling guilty for neglecting his son due to his business commitments, Michi, as a father, wanted to make amends. It was the first time he had seen his son so eager to have something, so he agreed immediately. At first, he thought it was just an ordinary toy, but he soon discovered that it was actually a video game console, along with the intriguing game his son requested, Super Mario Bros. Seeing how happy his son was made Michi feel joy as a father. He had always felt remorseful because his son didn't have a mother, and he couldn't spare much time for him. Therefore, he decided to play with his son whenever he could find the time. He fondly remembered how his son had lit up with happiness when he surprised him by buying the Legend of Zelda video game for him. This time, Michi bought a Zapper light gun without his son knowing, planning to surprise him once again. After returning to their mansion, Michi entered the house and headed for the living room. There, he saw his son deeply engrossed in playing the Legend of Zelda, with the maid watching him play. "Matsui, Papa is here," Michi said cheerfully as he approached the living room, holding the Kishin products in his hand. "Papa!" The 7-year-old Matsui eagerly paused the video game and ran to hug Michi. After embracing his son, Michi exclaimed, "Look what Papa has!" He displayed the wrapped Kishin package product box to Matsui. "Kishin!" Matsui exclaimed upon seeing the logo on the package, eagerly grabbing it. Matsui carefully unwrapped the Kishin package, revealing Kishin's new product inside, the Zapper light gun and the game Duck Hunt. Matsui's face lit up with joy, and he cheered with excitement. "Yay! Thank you, Papa!" Matsui hugged Michi tightly before rushing to the TV to connect the Zapper light gun to the Famicom. Michi couldn't help but chuckle as he shook his head, then proceeded to remove his suit, handing it to the maid, who bowed in appreciation. Michi turned his attention to Matsui and took a seat on the couch, watching his son start the game. "Look, Papa! It's working!" Matsui exclaimed with excitement, pointing the gun at the flying ducks and successfully bringing them down with each trigger pull. "Ha ha ha! That dog is hilarious!" Matsui laughed as the dog holding a duck appeared from behind the bushes, continuing to enjoy the game. Michi smiled as he observed his delighted son. It was the most heartwarming feeling in the world. To witness his once reserved 7-year-old son now smiling and laughing joyfully while playing video games. Michi felt immense gratitude toward those who created video game consoles and crafted unique, engaging video games. He couldn't express enough thanks to Kishin, especially the individual behind it, for introducing these remarkable video games to the world. If Shin were aware of Michi's thoughts, he might have replied with the words, "Thank Nintendo, not me." However, such a response would likely be met with confusion. Chapter 74, Kishin's Program. Tora Headquarters. We're still grappling with the Suzuki console, yet this Kishin device never fails to add to our troubles, Taro lamented with a sigh. If it weren't for our strong game library, we might have already lost our footing, one of the executives remarked. But there's an intriguing concept here: the constant introduction of diverse controllers like the Suzuki keyboard bundled with educational cartridges and the Kishin Zapper light gun. Perhaps we should develop our own, Taro suggested, shifting from lamentation to action. There was no time for lamentation, they needed to focus on creating their own controller. We do have a more capable research team than Kishin. We should be capable of crafting a superior controller for our console, one of the executives affirmed. The consensus was unanimous among the executives. Suzuki Electronics. It appears they've been researching this controller for a while. Releasing it just after our keyboard controller with the console is quite a move, Nico commented with a smile as he examined the gun-shaped Zapper light gun. After examining it, he aimed the Zapper light gun at the television, where the screen displayed Duck Hunt. With a pull of the trigger, the duck fell down. The other executives at the conference table watched with furrowed brows. Nico waved his hand in front of the Zapper light gun's sensor. The controller is detecting light from this, Nico explained while keeping his eyes on the gun's pointer. We should develop something similar, someone suggested. Absolutely. We can't allow such a small company to exploit this technology, Nico said with a confident smile. Suzuki Trademark Entertainment. Suzuki Entertainment was a video games company subsidiary of the Suzuki Group, with Seiki temporarily managing it until they found a suitable CEO. Are you able to lure Kishin game developers to join us? Seiki inquired as he held his phone to his ear. Unfortunately, they have no intention of switching companies, a voice replied on Seiki's phone. How is that possible? Didn't you entice them with higher salaries? Seiki asked urgently. The voice on the other end of the line shook his head, saying, I did, but they remain resolute in their loyalty to Kishin. It's baffling how devoted and honest they are to Kishin. The man lamented. Sigh. It's a shame. I really wanted to bring those talented individuals into our company, Seiki sighed helplessly, shaking his head. But keep trying to recruit them. Maybe some, or even a few, will eventually leave Kishin to join us. The man on the other end of the call replied, understood. After ending the call, Seiki gazed at a photo in his hand. It was a picture of Shiryu. His men had come across his second brother on Shibuya Crossing and snapped a photo of Shiryu sleeping on the sidewalk. Sigh. If only you weren't so stubborn, Seiki sighed. He had hoped his second brother would return and lead this new subsidiary company by convincing their father. After all, Shiryu was a genuinely intelligent individual. The alternative was his other obstinate, ignorant brother, Shinru Suzuki. However, Seiki had no intention of searching for Shinru, as Shinru lacked Shiryu's intelligence. The sales of the Zapper light gun saw tremendous success thanks to the advertising campaign. On the first day alone, its sales reached 13,000 units. With a price of 3,798 yen for the Zapper light gun, it was considered affordable compared to the Suzuki keyboard controller. With 13,000 units sold, Kishin had profited at least 49 million yen. However, for other companies, they could only estimate Kishin's sales, as it wasn't public information. They roughly estimated the Zapper light gun's revenue to be around 35 million yen. Kishin headquarters. It's yet another tremendous success. It seems I'll have to consider giving our employees a raise, Shin said with a wry smile. The employees who heard this erupted in cheers, and papers and documents were joyfully tossed around. You all are getting too comfortable. Lee Han reprimanded the exuberant employees, though he seemed helpless amidst their celebration. Sorry, sir. We're just incredibly excited. One of the employees bowed in apology. Shin, understanding their enthusiasm, patted Lee Han on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Let them be. They deserve to celebrate during times like these." Lee Han reluctantly nodded. The employees sighed in relief, thinking Shin would let the matter slide, but then Shin continued with a joking smile, "Let them revel in their success now, so when the company faces challenges." Shin paused and playfully added, "They'll have to work harder and strive to meet my expectations." Lee Han looked at Shin in speechless disbelief. "Ah!" The employees exclaimed with a mix of amusement and astonishment, recognizing that Shin's statement was half joking and half serious. Up until now, Shin had been hoping that independent game developers would create games for his open platform Famicom. He had prepared for this ahead of time, expecting numerous programmers to develop their own video games and present them to Kishin headquarters. After all, in the history of this world's video game industry, one of the main reasons for the industry's 97% decline was the influx of low-quality games flooding the market. This was likely why Suzuki 16-bit and Tora 16-bit had closed their platforms. Shin couldn't wait any longer, he needed to inspire programmers to become game developers. Only through this could he elevate the popularity of video games in this world. Although his company was only several months old, he had to establish a program to support potential independent game developers in the future. Unfortunately, he couldn't rely on internet promotion, which was painfully slow and attracted few viewers. The best approach was to advertise through their broadcast channel partner, Asahi. And so, Shin took immediate action, and his employees followed his directives. A week ago. In a modest apartment in Chuo, Tokyo. A young man named Kinoshita Yoshi was currently without a job. He slumped on the hard wooden floor of his inexpensive apartment, his eyes filled with hopelessness as he gazed at the television displaying The Legend of Zelda. Kinoshita Yoshi had always been a fan of The Legend of Zelda anime and video games. He appreciated the rich world background it offered. That's why when he was assigned to write a story for a video game project that aimed to emulate The Legend of Zelda within Tora, he was genuinely excited. As a proud storyteller, he didn't want to merely copy The Legend of Zelda, he yearned to craft a unique world that set itself apart from the iconic game. However, because of this ambition, he was let go from his job. And he understood why. Now, everything felt utterly hopeless as he stared at the television, his life devoid of purpose. His savings, a mere 600,000 yen, probably wouldn't last him for long. As he watched the television, playing The Legend of Zelda, finally came to an end. So, he'll be facing Aquamentus in the next episode. Kinoshita Yoshi commented without any emotion. Just as he was about to turn off the TV, an advertisement unexpectedly appeared. Kinoshita Yoshi halted his action and fixed his gaze on the television. It was a Kishin advertisement, and whether it was for Kishin video games or something else, he was curious to see how successful Kishin was in challenging Tora. After all, he held resentment towards Tora. But the advertisement that played was unlike any other. Join us. You can develop your own video games for our console. A well-known celebrity declared, then added, Kishin offers affordable development kits for independent video game developers. If you can create your own video games, Kishin can even assist you in distributing them with low royalty fees. What are you waiting for, programmers? Get on board and start developing your games. Kinoshita Yoshi stared at the television, completely bewildered. Is there hope? Kinoshita Yoshi murmured, a glimmer of hope now shining in his previously despairing eyes. Chapter 75, Kinoshita Yoshi's Proposal. Chuo, Tokyo. Kinoshita Yoshi was contemplating investing his 600,000 yen in creating a video game. Upon seeing an advertisement, he realized that to access Kishin's hardware documentation, he needed to visit their office, Kishin. This documentation was crucial to understanding the capabilities of Kishin's Famicom hardware, ensuring the smooth operation of any developed video game, and allowing programmers to optimize their creations to harness the full potential of the hardware. Kinoshita Yoshi could acquire the hardware documentation once he had assembled his team. As stated in the advertisement, Kishin was eager to provide such information but required a non-disclosure agreement. Interestingly, major companies like Tora and Suzuki showed no interest in Kishin's hardware. Kinoshita Yoshi had been pondering various ideas, but his financial constraints prevented him from paying programmers or providing them with the necessary equipment. However, a sudden idea struck him. He remembered having numerous programmer friends with their own computers and essential tools. Perhaps he should reach out to them? Yet, he hesitated, uncertain whether this group of friends would be willing to leave their current jobs to join his endeavor of establishing a game company. Tora Trademark VG Entertainment. Game Developers Department. I'm racking my brain, but it's incredibly challenging to come up with video games that surpass The Legend of Zelda, Ajino Kichiro exclaimed, scratching his head in frustration, causing his hair to become disheveled. Noya Kunio, his colleague, offered support by patting him on the shoulder, reminding him, hang in there, my friend. You took on Yoshi's role, after all. Ajino Kichiro sported noticeable bags under his eyes and lamented, why did they assign me as a narrative designer, anyway? I can't even generate ideas. Noya Kunio chuckled, recalling Ajino Kichiro's suggestion during the conference, you brought this upon yourself when you proposed family-friendly games to the higher UPS. Ajino Kichiro sighed in resignation, admitting, I was merely making a suggestion. I had no idea they would appoint me as the narrative designer for it. Speaking of narrative designer, I wonder how our friend is faring, Noya Kunio said, expressing some concern. Ajino Kichiro paused his complaints, his thoughts turning to his friend, I wonder what he's doing now. Is he taking care of himself? In Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio's eyes, Kinoshita Yoshi had done nothing wrong. In fact, both of them had witnessed the unwavering determination and hard work of their friend, Kinoshita Yoshi. As they were lost in thoughts about their friend, Ajino Kichiro's phone rang abruptly. Ajino Kichiro swiftly retrieved his Suzuki phone from his pocket. He peered at the small, monochromatic screen of his phone and exclaimed, oh, it's Yoshi. Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio exchanged knowing glances. Answer it, perhaps he needs some assistance, Noya Kunio suggested with a nod to Ajino Kichiro. Ajino Kichiro nodded in agreement and picked up the call. Hello, Yoshi. How are you? Ajino Kichiro inquired as he answered, placing the phone next to his ear. I'm doing well, thank you for asking, Kinoshita Yoshi replied, but before Ajino Kichiro could delve further, Kinoshita Yoshi hastily added, I'm actually calling you about an important matter, Kichiro-san. Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio exchanged puzzled glances, prompting Ajino Kichiro to ask, an important matter? Yes, I have a significant proposal. Kinoshita Yoshi began but hesitated in his tone. Just as Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio were about to inquire further, Kinoshita Yoshi continued hesitantly, "Have you seen the Kishin advertisement?" "Kishin advertisement?" Ajino Kichiro responded, slightly perplexed. They had come across many Kishin advertisements when the company summoned them to inspect their competitors' products. Ajino Kichiro glanced at Noya Kunio to check if he was familiar with what Kinoshita Yoshi was referring to, but Noya Kunio simply shook his head. "Are you referring to the Zapper light gun?" Ajino Kichiro asked with uncertainty. Due to their busy work schedules, they hadn't kept up with the latest updates about their favorite anime, The Legend of Zelda. Moreover, watching it was forbidden by their employer, Tora, as it was produced by a competitor. Upon hearing Ajino Kichiro's response, Kinoshita Yoshi promptly followed up, saying, "Kishin just ran an advertisement about programmers being able to develop their own video games. They're offering an affordable development kit, comprising the necessary hardware components and tools for game development." His voice carried a hint of excitement as he continued speaking. Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio exchanged surprised glances, with Ajino Kichiro exclaiming, "Really? Kishin advertised that?" Kinoshita Yoshi responded quickly, "Yes. They're encouraging programmers to create their own independent games." Noya Kunio couldn't contain his amazement, blurting out, "I thought Kishin was a closed platform. I never expected this move from them." His voice was so loud that Kinoshita Yoshi on the other end of the phone could hear him. Kinoshita Yoshi, on the phone, exclaimed, "Oh, Kunio is there too." Ajino Kichiro looked at Noya Kunio with a playful chuckle and teased, "Yeah, he's been eavesdropping for a while now." Perplexed, Noya Kunio furrowed his brows and asked, "What do you mean?" "Hehe," Ajino Kichiro chuckled knowingly, addressing Kinoshita Yoshi on the other end of the call, "So, with the opportunity Kishin is offering, are you planning to develop a video game?" Ajino Kichiro surmised that Kinoshita Yoshi must be considering creating his own video game, given the nature of his questions, especially since Kinoshita Yoshi was currently unemployed. Kinoshita Yoshi chuckled on the other end of the phone and admitted, "You're right." Then, somewhat hesitantly, he continued, "I was hoping if you could." Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio exchanged knowing glances. Ajino Kichiro asked, "So, you're hoping to invite us to join your endeavors?" Kinoshita Yoshi fell silent after hearing that question. Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio exchanged glances once more, noticing the contemplation in each other's eyes. Noya Kunio teased, "You're quite ambitious, Yoshi. I didn't know you had it in you." Ajino Kichiro chimed in, "You're such a naive person, that's why I like you." Kinoshita Yoshi chuckled on the other end of the phone, lightening the atmosphere. Then he said, "Well, if you don't want to, it's okay." He spoke lightly, but his tone carried a hint of disappointment. Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio had indeed grown frustrated with their jobs at Tora's company, but they had been suppressing their feelings, knowing they needed to work to afford life in expensive Tokyo. As Kinoshita Yoshi was about to end the phone call, Ajino Kichiro hastily interjected, "Let me think it over for a while." Kinoshita Yoshi was slightly taken aback and exclaimed on the other end of the phone, "Et?" Noya Kunio, too, glanced at Ajino Kichiro in surprise. Ajino Kichiro reiterated after hearing Kinoshita Yoshi's perplexed exclamation, "I'm going to consider your proposal," speaking with careful thought. "Really?" Kinoshita Yoshi exclaimed, sounding pleasantly surprised. Even though Ajino Kichiro hadn't agreed outright, just the consideration meant he had a chance to join Kinoshita Yoshi in his venture. "Yeah, give me a few days, I'll get back to you," Ajino Kichiro said with a smile. "All right." Kinoshita Yoshi replied cheerfully before ending the phone call. After the phone call ended, Noya Kunio regarded Ajino Kichiro with a puzzled expression and asked, "Are you giving Yoshi false hope?" Ajino Kichiro shook his head and replied, "No, I genuinely plan to consider his idea or proposal." Noya Kunio continued to look confused as he inquired, Why? There's no certainty in developing independent video games. Ajino Kichiro chuckled and admitted, honestly, I've grown weary of working for Tora. It's stifling my creativity. Noya Kunio also chuckled, shaking his head in resignation, and said, well, if you're considering it, then count me in too. Ajino Kichiro and Noya Kunio shared a chuckle together. In truth, they weren't truly considering Kinoshita Yoshi's proposal, they were simply biding their time until they received their salaries. After all, Tora still owed them their hard-earned money, and they had no intention of quitting until they had received what was rightfully theirs.